Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the Broccoli Fanfics. Back with amazing fanfiction. This is the series of What If Deku Had Gijinka Mutation Quirk. Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. She didn't understand. Everybody else in the class could do it. Bakugo could ignite his palms and release explosions, Tsubasa could sprout wings, even that boy in the corner could stick to walls. And that wasn't all. Phasing, super fast reading, eye lasers, these and other quirks were demonstrated by her classmates. Yet no matter how hard she tried, Midoriya seemingly couldn't do anything. No explosions, no sticking to walls, nothing. She was currently hugging a teddy bear as big as herself, trying to find some comfort in the inanimate object. It too understood the lack of a quirk, she was safe with it. It still felt kinda lonely, though, especially since everybody was focusing on Bakugo and his great potential to be a hero. She didn't quite understand what that meant, but it must have been something nice if everybody was reacting so positively at it. Not that she cared. Right now, there was only one thing on Midoriya's mind. I wish I had a friend. She clutched the teddy bear. And then it happened. It slowly got covered in green light, its form changing as everybody noticed and approached her, Bakugo included. "What's going on?" he asked angrily. He got his answer soon enough. The light covering the teddy bear dissipated and revealed it had transformed into the girl. She did have a pair of bear-like ears on the top of her head, mitts resembling bear hands and brown clawed boots, but everything else resembled a girl no older than Midoriya, wearing a brown bodysuit with a bow tie. "Kuma-tan," chirped the girl as she hugged Midoriya back. "Where did this girl come from, Midoriya-san?" one of the caretakers asked. "In fact, weren't you hugging a teddy bear just now?" Midoriya nodded, the girl imitating her movements soon after. "I grabbed and held it, and then light appeared and swallowed it." The caretakers tilted their heads in confusion, while one of them said, "And this girl came out of it?" Midoriya nodded again as the girl chirped, "Kuma-tan," once again. "Can you undo it?" Midoriya and the girl exchanged looks, the latter smiling obliviously. The greenette promptly turned back to the caretakers and shook her head. "Well, whatever the case," Bakugo exclaimed. "My quirk's still cooler than whatever this is supposed to be." The girl turned to Bakugo, her button-like eyes piercing right through his wits as her smile turned into a neutral expression. "Kuma-tan," she growled quietly. "What's that, you wanna fight?" Bakugo clenched his fists. "Then come at me, you second-rate plush toy." The girl raised her mitts and flashed a row of sharp teeth as claws sprouted from her mitts. Though surprised, Bakugo didn't stand back from his challenge. "Kuma-tan, wait. Don't fight with him." The bear girl turned to Midoriya and retracted her teeth and claws before hugging the greenette once again. "She seems to listen to you, Midoriya-san," one of the caretakers remarked as he took a closer look. "It's possible she could be one of these sentient quirk scientists have been talking about for decades." Midoriya eyed Kuma-tan again. "Sentient quirk? Kuma-tan. I guess she's gonna take that as her name." Kuma-tan hugged Midoriya tightly. "Kuma-tan." And then, while glancing at the baffled Bakugo, Midoriya smiled and returned the hug. And that's the story of how I discovered my quirk. A now teenage Midoriya finished. After a bit more training, I found more aspects about it, but that's a story for another day. "That's quite an interesting story you just told me there," the person Midoriya was talking to, a shaggy man in dark clothing, said. "But how do I know you're not screwing with me or making this up?" Midoriya reached for her back, took out a teddy bear, and promptly activated her quirk. The teddy bear transformed into Kuma-tan, with no bow tie this time. "Kuma-tan," she chirped. The man stared at the sentient plush toy, then told to the greenette, "You're gonna be quite the unusual student. Speaking of which, what high school are you planning to go to?" Midoriya smiled proudly. "You Mo Midoriya. Quirk, Gijinka. She can transform any non-human entity into a humanoid version of itself. The object gains powers dissimilar to a quirk depending on the object before the transformation. The quirk works on plants, concepts, and phenomenons." Midoriya wasn't quite sure what to expect. She had trained her quirk as much as she could. She managed to learn just how extensive turning objects into waifus really was. She had even paid total attention to present Mick's explanation of how the exam would work. But a part of her still doubted her chances at passing the exam. Kumatan. Luckily, she brought her friendly neighborhood bear doll waifu with her. Thanks for trying to cheer me up, Kumatan, but we can't lower our guard yet, Midoriya replied as she faced the gates in front of her. We still need to gain enough points to pass the practical portion of the exam. And then, we'll be closer to becoming heroes. Who are you talking to? The pair turned around and saw a guy with glasses and blue hair approaching them. A closer look revealed there were exhaust pipes coming out of his legs, probably a result of his quirk. Oh, I'm talking with Kumatan, Midoriya explained, grabbing and showing the living doll to the guy as she added, I create her whenever I need some reassurance and positive vibes. So, the guy scratched his chin. Your quirk lets you create living things? More or less. I touch an object, activate my quirk, and next thing I know, the object turns into a female humanoid who follows my command. I see, an interesting quirk to say the least, the guy sighed. However, I'm certain you're aware we're not supposed to use our quirks until the practical portion starts, right? Midoriya raised an eyebrow. I don't remember Present Mike telling us about that rule. Because it's a rule that doesn't need to be spoken. Simple good sportsmanship would let you know about that unspoken rule, the guy stated, adjusting his shining glasses as he continued. To use your quirk before the practical portion starts is not only you trying to gain an advantage over everybody else, but also prompting them to do the same in order to catch up. Soon enough, the entire portion would be thrown into chaos, where people constantly try to outdo each other, ignoring the true purpose of the test. Midoriya and Kumatan exchanged confused looks, shooting a dual one at the guy so he would return to reality. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get so passionate. I've been trained and raised to believe everybody deserves to be treated equally, and you using your quirk before the portion starts makes me think you're trying to get an advantage over everybody else. Yeah, I get that, Midoriya remarked as she turned back to the gates. However, I think the exam itself breaks down your argument. The guy raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? Well, think of it like this. We're trying to enter UA, one of the most prestigious hero schools in the world, which has an acceptance rate of not even 1%. With that in mind, aren't people just gonna try to gain an unfair advantage as soon as the portion starts regardless? The guy looked stunned at the girl, then scratched his chin as he hummed. I have to admit, I didn't think about that. May I ask who you are? Midoriya flashed a smile at the boy. Name's Mo Midoriya. Alright then, Midoriya, I'm Tenya Ida. The guy stiffly extended his hand towards the girl. A pleasure to meet you. Midoriya moved Kumatan to the hand, and the living doll shook it as the girl spoke. Ida? That name sounds familiar. The guy seemed ready to explain the name, or at least wonder how she didn't know about them, when gates opened and air horns were blown with Present Mix booming announcement. There are no countdowns in real life. Go inside and kick some butt, hero hopefuls. Well, looks like we gotta go, Midoriya said, placing a determined Kumatan on her head as she added, good luck with the entrance exam, Ida-kun. With that said, Midoriya bolted off inside, Ida standing stunned for a moment before he too entered, and went his separate way. Once inside the training city, Midoriya and Kumatan scanned the training city, hoping to find any signs of the robots that they were supposed to fight. Keep your eyes peeled, Kumatan, the greenette stated. Those things could come anywhere, anytime. Kumatan. By sheer luck, Midoriya and the living doll found themselves facing off against one of the point robots soon after entering. More specifically, they were engaging a victory, a robot that costed 1 point and was meant to represent the easiest villain encounter possible. Alright, time to test something, Midoriya proclaimed as she grabbed the living doll. Kumatan, attack them. Midoriya threw the living doll at the robot, who pulled up their shield as Kumatan bared her claws and, upon hitting the shield, began clawing rapidly at it. Though the shield was left with quite a few scratch marks, it wasn't actually injured, and the robot easily swung it to throw the living doll soon after. Just in time to see Midoriya running up to it. What I'm about to try is totally crazy, but it's worth a shot. Midoriya touched the robot and activated her quirk, engulfing the robot in light as it transformed. Once the light dissipated, the robot had transformed into a tiny, female humanoid version of itself, being barely taller than Kumatan herself. Victory Tan. Midoriya covered her mouth, trying desperately not to scream at the cuteness in front of her. I know they're supposed to be the ultimate obstacle against me, but they're so cute. Then she grew exasperated. I really hope I find a way to make them seem more like people and not like dolls, otherwise nobody's gonna take me seriously. Kumatan. You're right, Kumatan, we need to get going. Midoriya stated. Victory Tan, I'm trusting you to help us take down as many robots as possible, alright? The humanoid robot did the yes sir gesture, proclaiming with a serious tone. Victory Tan. Midoriya's words rang true as Ida scanned the scenery surrounding him, more often than not finding people trying to upstage each other in order to gain some points. A tactic he found himself doing as well, but which was something he just couldn't avoid. There were only so many villain bots around, after all, and if you wanted the slightest chance at entering UA, you needed to gain a decent score here. He wasn't happy about it, but there was nothing he could do but dash forward. Alright, that should be 20 points, he said as he decked another robot in the head. Now, to look for further robots to strike dash. But then he caught a glimpse of something interesting. It was Midoriya, not only having Kumatan on her head, but a miniature female version of one of the point robots following her. Naturally, he felt compelled to go up to her and ask her where the creature came from, but he was quickly reminded he was in an exam when a 2-point robot, Imperial, got on his way. Ida quickly dashed towards the robot and threw a dive kick at it, taking out its core and shutting it down soon after. Help! Ida turned around to see one of the applicants trying to stand up, only her leg was stuck under the shield of a destroyed 1-point robot. Ida thought about leaving the girl there. After all, the robots were falling like flies, and if he didn't go quickly enough, he'd fall short of the points necessary to pass the portion. Besides, there were dozens of other applicants around. Even if they were trying to upstage one another, surely someone would hear her cries for help and save her, right? Even so, he dashed to her aid. Don't worry, I'll get you out. Ida grabbed the shield and raised it, shoving it to the side as the girl watched him, breathing heavily and sweating bullets. Thanks, she said. I was starting to worry nobody would come help me. Well, you're safe now, Ida paused. Can you stand up? The girl tried to do so, but as soon as she put some force on her leg, she dropped down, letting out a pained scream. I can't. I think I twisted my ankle. Ida took a deep breath, then went closer towards the girl, grabbing her arms and lifting her up. What are you doing? Ida brought the girl to his back, and she wrapped her arms around his neck as he grabbed her legs and stood up. Why you don't have to do this? If you're not okay with this, why did you wrap your arms around my neck? To avoid falling down, of course. But besides, can you even attack the robots with me on your back? Ida paused a moment to think about the question, and once he thought of an answer, he responded. Right now, the priority is to keep you out of harm's way. Otherwise, you'll be a sitting duck. Then at least let me help. If we come across any of the robots, I'll use my quirk to attack them. And meanwhile, I'll use my mobility to avoid their attacks. Okay, sounds good, let's go. And with that said, Ida ran off, keeping a tight grip on the girl as he thought. For all intents and purposes, what I'm doing is pretty much pointless. Any robot she destroys will be added to her score, and I can't feasibly attack without risking her life. Nevertheless, Ida narrowed his eyes with determination. Even so, regardless of whether this is pointless or not, a hero must always help those in need. Meanwhile, back with Midoriya and her Gijinka, Kumatan and Victory Tan worked in tandem to try get as many points for Midoriya as possible, Kumatan launching herself at the robots and distracting them while Victory Tan shot her weapons, which proved shockingly effective at destroying her fellow robots. Alright, with those done, that should put us at 40 points. Midoriya chirped as the girls ran back to her. Nice work, you two. Kumatan eagerly high-fived her maker, while Victory Tan stared at the hand with neutral confusion. It's a high five, Midoriya explained, high-fiving herself as she added, You do it with people when something good happens. Victory Tan remained neutral as she raised her arms, bringing up the fact she had blasters for hands. Luckily, the group didn't have time to think about that as the ground violently shook and began cracking underneath them. "Wo! What's going on?" Kumatan and Victory Tan hugged Midoriya as the ground cracked further, until eventually, something rose from it. Ida and the girl were among the people who were frozen in place, looking absolutely stunned at the mechanical newcomer. The robot was easily taller than most of the buildings, its mere hand easily tumbling them down as it scanned the place with its dozen red glowing eyes. This was the zero-pointer robot, fittingly known as Executor. Holy shit, what is that? It's the Executor, the robot Present Mike warned us about. I didn't think we'd see it so soon. No, we're not seeing it sooner than intended, Ida remarked, the girl kindly adjusting his glasses as he added, time must have gone by faster than we expected, and we're now at the final phase of the entrance exam. What do we do now? The girl asked worriedly. There's no way we can fight that thing, is there? The applicants began running away from the robot. No, we're not gonna fight it. Ida turned and joined the other applicants as they fled, though he was visibly upset at doing this. Back with Midoriya, she rubbed her head as she stood up and looked around her. Suddenly, she was visibly in the air, standing on top of some green thing she could only assume was the ultimate robot, the Executor. Huh, would you look at that? The greenette remarked. What are the chances that we'd land right on top the Executor? Victory Tan. Midoriya and Kumatan went to Victory Tan's side and looked down. Once the scare of seeing just how far above the ground shook off, Midoriya saw Ida and the applicants running away, with the robot reaching its hand out to them. Then she looked back at where she was and got a crazy idea. Kumatan. I know it's insane, Kumatan, but I gotta try it. Back at the ground, everybody stopped when the Executor's form was enveloped by light, it dissipating as the robot transformed. It now resembled a giant, baby-like female version of itself, being practically a giant, chubby robot girl with a dozen eyes. Zero Tan. Then, as everybody looked stunned at her, Zero Tan rose her arm and took out the trio of Midoriya, Kumatan and Victory Tan back to the ground, the greenette wobbling down as Ida ran to her. Midoriya-san, he exclaimed. Are you okay? Why I am, Midoriya said wearily, waving her hand as she added, and why you're fine too, right? Yeah, but, Ida looked at Zero Tan. You did that? Yeah, it did. And with that revelation, Midoriya collapsed, turning the Tans back to normal as the entrance exam came to a close. Midoriya slowly regained consciousness and opened her eyes, her blurry vision clearing up as an older woman spoke. You're finally awake, I see. Midoriya turned her head around and saw a miniature nurse sitting on a chair, looking at her with a neutral expression. Recovery girl. So, you know who I am, the nurse remarked. I had a feeling I'd need to introduce myself once you woke up, since you collapsed before the exam came to a close. Oh yeah, now I'm remembering, Midoriya put a hand on her head. I was trying to gather points with the help of Kumatan and Victory Tan when the Executor appeared, and when I saw everybody running away from it in fear, I did the first thing that came to mind. You put too much strain on your body, and as a consequence, you collapsed shortly after you hit the ground. Recovery girl finished. You know, you're very lucky that the exam was almost over when it happened. Yeah, I can imagine, hee. While we're at it, I need to ask, who are Kumatan and Victory Tan? Are they products of your quirk? Yeah, Midoriya scratched her head. My quirk lets me turn non-living things into small, female humanoids that follow my every whim. Recovery girl hummed. So that's why there was a teddy bear near you when you collapsed. That was most likely the bear I used to create Kumatan, Midoriya remarked, right before realizing something. You didn't do anything to it, right? Recovery girl got off her chair and walked up to a desk, where she searched the junk in it until she took out a teddy bear. No, all I did was grab it and put it somewhere safe. Recovery girl walked back to Midoriya, and she reached for the teddy bear before the small nurse pulled it away. You can't use your quirk to turn it into Kumatan, you're still recovering. Yeah, I know that, recovery girl. I won't use my quirk, I promise. With some slight hesitation, Recovery Girl handed the teddy bear to Midoriya, who hugged it cheerfully. Say, what happened to Victory Tan and Zero Tan? I'm guessing you're referring to the transformed 1 and 0-pointer robots. They turned back to normal once you collapsed. I see. And how were the other applicants? Are they okay? Recovery Girl raised an eyebrow. You're actually worried for how the other applicants are? Midoriya raised an eyebrow in return. Am I not supposed to? Recovery Girl paused, then waved her hand. Nah, forget it. The applicants are okay. They're bruised from fighting the robots, obviously, but they don't have any major injuries. Man, that's a relief. Midoriya plopped down to the bed. I'd hate it if I turned the executor into a giant baby for nothing. That's a line to add to the list of things I'd never thought I'd hear. Recovery Girl smiled. Anyhow, you just need to rest for a few minutes, and then you can go home, got it? Midoriya nodded while hugging the teddy bear. Good. Well, I gotta go do something at the teacher's lounge. Don't go anywhere, all right? Midoriya rolled her eyes. Yes, Recovery Girl. The nurse opened the door and quietly left the infirmary, allowing Midoriya to rest. At least, until a familiar face entered. Ida-kun. And that's what she told me, Recovery Girl said to her fellow teachers and Principal Nizu. So far what do you think? Her quirk is truly something unlike anything else I've ever seen before, Nizu remarked. To think it allowed her to even transform the executor into a servant to her whims. Which is something I'll have to consider when updating those things. Power Loader, the support gadgetry teacher, spoke. If any future applicants try to do what she did, we better make them work hard for it. I'll admit her quirk has incredible potential, but we can't forget that we still need to evaluate her performance in both the written and practical portions. Eraserhead, the tired Lucan underground hero, sighed, folding his arms as he added, a strong quirk means nothing if one doesn't have the brains to use it effectively. Eraserhead shot a look at All Might, who quickly avoided eye contact. You know, I just got an idea. Midnight, the only other woman in the room besides Recovery Girl, blurted. What if her looks hide how smart she really is? Who knows, maybe if we check the written portion, we'll find out she's as smart as Nizu. The room was filled with an eerie silence, only for it to break when Nizu burst out laughing and Eraserhead looked positively flabbergasted. Okay, I'd expect such an outrageous thing to come out of Mrs. Joke's mouth, but not you, Midnight. She's got a point, though, Nizu said, suddenly calm. Let's wait until we've reviewed both her performances before deciding anything. Now that must definitely be a joke on your part, Principal Nizu, Eraserhead stated. Everyone here knows that you usually have the current student lineup in your head as soon as the exams are over. In fact, you're probably choosing who will pass, who'll be rejected, and who'll go to which classroom as we speak. At the same time. I won't deny your suspicion, Eraserhead, but I do believe it helps if you review the performance of the students. Nizu clasped his paws together. Now, does anybody have any questions? A man with a red costume raised his hand. Yes, Vlad King? How are we supposed to determine how many points this girl got? For all intents and purposes, she had the transformed Victory take the points, not her, so how would we deal with that? Isn't it obvious, Vlad King? Since transforming the Victory robot was her using her quirk, that would have made the transformed robot into an extension of her, therefore any points the robot got, this girl would get as well, All Might argued. Besides, we're only talking about villain points here. We still have to discuss rescue points. In that case, Tenya Ida would enter the conversation, Nizu said. He intentionally helped an injured applicant get around and gather points, despite the fact that Present Mike worded his explanation as to imply that rescuing people was a waste of time. Geez, Principal Nizu, do you have to make me sound like a jackass? Mike asked with a chuckle. I worded it to imply that rescuing people wouldn't get the applicant's points, that's it. And yet this kid grabbed a girl and kept her safe, with she in return doing the same by protecting him while they ran, Eraserhead sighed. I'll admit, that was a good change of pace from everybody getting on top of each other, trying to get points first. Indeed, and he racked up a decent number of villain points as well, Nizu stated. So, he's more than likely being admitted to the hero course, like his brother before him. Recovery Girl took a deep breath, getting Nizu's attention. Is something the matter, Recovery Girl? I just had a thought. I know we need to talk about the general applicants first before going to the recommended ones. The miniature nurse frowned. But one of those recommended applicants made me realize a terrifying thought. Midnight raised an eyebrow. Who are you talking about? Momo Yaoyorozu, of course. Everybody turned their attention to the nurse, with Midnight being the first to speak. Now that you mention her, the Yaoyorozu family are famous for having quirks related to creation, and hers is said to be the strongest quirk they have right now. I reviewed her performance during the recommendation exam as well. Nizu blurted. She's got a strong quirk, but her handle of it is rather rough. A few years in UA could help her take her quirk to the next level. I agree, but what I want to bring up is the fact that she and this Midoriya girl have surprisingly similar quirks. They both involve creating stuff, whose overuse can make the users suffer severe fatigue. Of course, while Yaoyorozu-san can create non-living things from her skin, Midoriya-san creates servants of her while using non-living things. So if Yaoyorozu-san created an object, Midoriya-san could turn that object into one of her servants, Eraserhead hummed. I think I see the synergy you're talking about, Recovery Girl. Which is the basis of my next suggestion. Assuming they both make the cut, put them in different classes. What? Eraserhead and Vlad King asked in unison. The hero course classes have a history of not getting along. While this fosters their drive to become stronger and better themselves, it doesn't do much to convince them to work together. If we put a pair with such synergy in different classes, then it'll drive at least those two to work together, and hopefully their example will spread to their classmates as well. You're forgetting a very important thing, however, Eraserhead interjected. Just because they have synergy doesn't mean they'll get along. In fact, what if they develop a rivalry rather than a companionship? Then things between the classes will be the same regardless of who goes where. You both bring up valid points, Nizu remarked. I'll have to take this into consideration when I re-evaluate the lineups. Anyhow, anybody got any other questions before we end the meeting? So, how did you know that transforming the executor would work the way it did? Ida and Midoriya were walking back home, the latter hugging her teddy bear plushie as she thought about her answer. If you mean how did I see it turning into a super baby, I honestly didn't. I thought it would turn into a little girl like all my other creations. If you mean how I knew it would stop its rampage, every creature I create is loyal to me and me alone. If I want it to stop fighting, it'll do so, no questions asked. I see, Ida scratched his chin. I guess it was a dumb question to ask. Nobody would know what your quirk does better than you do. Not necessarily. Ida turned to Midoriya, who raised her head as she explained. Before today, I thought my creations would always come out like little girls, and that I could only create them from things not much bigger than myself. And yet, not only did I turn something vastly bigger than me into a baby, but the resulting strain from the transformation knocked me out. Ida nodded. When you put it like that, I guess there are things even you don't know about your quirk. Yeah, but enough about me, Midoriya faced Ida with a sly smile. How's the girl you saved during the exam? Is she okay? Yeah, she's recovering. Did you ask for her name? Midoriya's smile grew more teasing. Did she look shy or like she was flirting with you? Ida pounded his fists suddenly, startling the greenette. I knew I was forgetting something. You go back home right away, Midoriya-san. I'll go see if visiting hours aren't over yet. But dash. Ida turned around and ran back to the school, Midoriya chuckling as he saw the stiff man disappear in the distance. That's not a hospital. Giggling for a few more seconds, Midoriya eventually caught her breath and kept walking. Along the way, she used her quirk and recreated Kumatan, who waved her arms in joy. Kumatan. Yeah, we survived the entrance exam, Kumatan, the greenette said as she put the living doll on her head. And I have the feeling we did well enough to pass. Kumatan. Midoriya eyed the duel, then chuckled. Fine, you were right. I shouldn't have worried so much about the exam in the first place. But in my defense, that worry made me give it my all to make sure I'd pass. Kumatan rolled her eyes and nodded, hugging her creator shortly after. And as Midoriya walked into the sunset, she had a feeling this was gonna be the start of something incredible. The start of her journey to become a pro hero. Midoriya ran out the train, sporting the UA uniform as she headed straight for the building. Today was her first day at UA, and she was determined to try make it as best as possible. Sure, she may have shown her doubts back during the entrance exam, but now that she knew she had passed, she was a bit more confident and, hey, is that a person? Look out. The person barely managed to turn around before they and Midoriya crashed into each other, hitting the ground soon after. Once the dust settled and Midoriya opened her eyes, she saw she had crashed into a lady with black hair tied in a spiky ponytail, as well as a long bang on the left side of her face. Or was it the right side? Sorry, ma'am. Ma'am? The raven-haired girl exclaimed in shock. But I'm on a hurry and I gotta head to UA. Wait, you're going to UA too? Hearing that, Midoriya took a closer look at the girl as they both stood up, and saw she was wearing the same uniform as her. Oh, you're wearing UA's uniform. Midoriya bowed down. Sorry, I didn't see it before because I was too focused on something else. And no, it's all right, you didn't get hurt, right? Midoriya raised her head and shook it. I'm fine. By the way, I'm Midoriya. What a cute name, the girl remarked. I'm Momo Yaoyorozu. Well, nice to meet you. Yaoyorozu senpai. Yaoyorozu nearly collapsed right then and there. Senpai? Yeah, I mean you look too old to be a student but you're wearing the uniform, so that must mean you're a third year or something. Yaoyorozu stared at Midoriya, too stunned by the statement to say anything. Ah crap, I'm wasting time here. Midoriya bowed again and bolted off. I hope to see you again soon, Yaoyorozu senpai. Yaoyorozu remained there, still stunned by Midoriya's words. Eventually, the greenette reached the UA building and quickly crossed the mob of people blocking the student board. Once she went through, she found her name among those in Class 1B, the second hero course class. The news brought a wide smile to her face as she grabbed her backpack and opened it, Kumatan poking her head out soon after. Kumatan? Look there, Kumatan. Midoriya grabbed the living doll and showed her the board. I'm in Class 1B. Kumatan eyed the board for a while, before turning to her creator and giving her a big hug. Kumatan. Yeah, I'm happy too. The duo hugged as the students dispersed and went to their classes, Midoriya being the last one standing at the board. We're gonna be late, Midoriya said, shoving Kumatan inside her backpack in a hurry. We'll celebrate some more later, Kumatan. Kumatan. Midoriya zipped her backpack shut and promptly ran into the building, scanning her surroundings as she searched for. Hey! No running in the hallways. The greenette stopped on her tracks, bowed at the tired-looking man who shouted that, and power walked her way upstairs. Once there, she stood in front of S giant door with a 1B sign next to it. Something told her this was the classroom she was looking for, so she opened the door and went inside. What she saw upon stepping a foot into the classroom was nothing special, mostly a bunch of teenagers waiting for their homeroom teacher to arrive, some doing things to pass time like playing rock, paper, scissors. Alright, this is it. Midoriya clenched her fist and smiled with determination. My high school debut begins today. I know this is something I should have thought about earlier, but still, today's the day. Time to make the best first impression ever. Midoriya walked towards one of the empty desks, sweating as she felt everybody suddenly look at her. Hey, greenhead. Midoriya tripped and hit the floor hard enough to leave a crack. My goodness. A female voice exclaimed. Are you okay? Midoriya giggled as she got up on her knees and dusted herself. Yeah, not the first time I've hit the floor. Suddenly, Midoriya's backpack began hopping, trying to escape her hold, all while some muffling noises were heard. Midoriya promptly opened her backpack, and Kumatan hopped out, baring her claws and trying to roar as threateningly as possible. What came instead was pure, stunned silence. Don't worry, she's a quirk-made construct. She won't hurt anybody unless I tell her to. The greenette exclaimed as she crawled to Kumatan's side and grabbed the living doll. Quick, Kumatan, get back in the bag, please. What is that thing? A bug-eyed, brown-haired guy asked. Kumatan's not a thing. Midoriya snapped, pausing to regain her strength as Kumatan hissed at the guy. She's a living being I created with my quirk. Whoa, so wait a minute, a guy with silver hair and eyebrows circling around his eyes said. You can straight up create life with your quirk? That's so manly. By that he means cool, a girl with orange hair tied in a ponytail said. At least, I think that's what he means. Why was she in the backpack? A raven-haired, stone-faced guy asked. I created Kumatan when I awakened my quirk, and since then I keep her around for emotional support and just in case I need her, Midoriya explained as she hastily placed the living doll back in her backpack. But since that could count as me using my quirk, and that's not really allowed, I keep her in my backpack just to be safe. And can't you just, I don't know, put it back to their previous form until you're in private? A guy with blonde hair asked. Midoriya narrowed her eyes. Did you just call Kumatan in it? I mean, it's technically just an object given life. Midoriya eyed the guy angrily. You know what, Kumatan? Go get him. The living doll bared her claws and fanged grin. Good morning. The doll turned back to her harmless form, and Midoriya quickly hid her in her backpack before sitting down an empty desk. She then scanned the person who had just entered. He was a tall, muscular man wearing a red uniform with some odd tubes that seemed to go from his back to his shoulders. Good morning, the students replied calmly. All right, it seems you're all composed. That's good. Being able to remain calm during a tense situation is a quality of a good hero, the man said. Anyway, let me introduce myself. I'm Saikidru Kan, otherwise known as Vlad King. I'll be your homeroom teacher this year. The students nodded and hummed in response, with one notable exception, the guy that called Kumatan, who raised his hand and asked, What are we gonna do today, Vlad King-sensei? Well, just the normal high school opening ceremony, narrated by Principal Nizu, and the DLVRY of your syllabus before calling it a day. Huh, that's it? A guy with a speech bubble for a head asked. I thought there would be more things. Don't worry, the principal talks so much, you'll be glad you only have the ceremony and syllabus to worry about. Astonishingly, this wasn't as reassuring as Vlad King thought. And when the opening ceremony came, the student's worries turned out to be appropriate. As soon as he opened his mouth, the little white cryptid known as Principal Nizu simply wouldn't shut up, talking about things that ranged from school-related, like how certain schools have gained a bad reputation from several villains coming from there, to unrelated stuff like his favorite tea. At the very least, Midoriya wasn't minding this as much as her classmates, the discussion about tea in particular catching her attention. Maybe this information would come in handy some other time. What did bother her, however, was the empty chairs laying near her class seats, with everybody else trying desperately to focus on Principal Nizu's speech and not the chairs. Midoriya glanced at the chairs, then turned back to Nizu, hoping this wasn't a sign of things to come. So, I wasn't the only one who noticed Class 1's absence, right? The ponytailed girl asked. You'd have to be blind to not notice over 20 empty chairs in the auditorium, a guy with an insectoid head stated harshly. Especially when those chairs should have been used by the other hero course class. These and other rumors rolled around the 1B students as they headed back to their classroom, ready to grab their schedules and call it a day. Midoriya awkwardly listened to the murmurs. She wasn't interested in them whatsoever, but she had a feeling that, even if she spoke up, her words would fall on deaf ears. So, might as well do the next best thing. Oh, erase her head. The group stopped on their tracks and faced forward, seeing a pale man in a black hero costume walking to them with 20 students behind him. Midoriya had a feeling she had seen the man before, but she couldn't quite pinpoint where. So that's the fabled Class 1A, the blonde guy folded his arms. Call me crazy, but this isn't the best first impression they could give us. To be fair, anybody would call you crazy even if you didn't bring up a good point, the insectoid-headed student spoke. The opening ceremony ended just now, Vlad King told his fellow teachers. Did you make good on your word and put your class through a quirk apprehension test? Quirk apprehension test? Midoriya repeated. What's that? It's a physical exercise performed by hero schools early in the school year to see what the students' quirks can do, and their physical fitness regardless of said quirks, Vlad King calmly explained. Such a test is normally reserved for the day after the opening ceremony, however. Or at the very least, it's sandwiched between that and the syllabus. And we're not doing that, why? Principal Nizu wanted us to focus on establishing the school schedule and let the students get a quick look through the facility before doing it. Vlad King lowered his eyelids. But like always, Eraserhead decided to do his own thing. You can run your class however you see fit. That's what Principal Nizu told us before the school year started, Eraserhead stated in response. And besides, might as well get the ones with little talent or control of their quirk out of the way before they cause damage to their classmates or themselves. Vlad King's eyes widened. So you did expel someone this time? Midoriya's eyes widened as well, her shock only growing when Eraserhead casually answered. Pretty much, yeah, but the little guy was clearly not cut out for the hero business. He took it much more gracefully than my previous class, too, so that's also a plus. Gracefully? A girl with long earlobes asked in disbelief. He got on his knees and begged you not to expel him, which is still taking it better than how my previous class did. And the first impression went from terrible to terrifying, the blonde guy from 1B grimaced. Terriblying. An equine student chirped, probably too innocent to tell the hint. Anyway, I was going to check up if there was still time to see the opening ceremony. Principal Nizu talks so much I figured he'd still be introducing the ceremony by the time we were finished. Well, that didn't happen, Vlad King replied sternly. He made a quick introduction, then continued to the opening speech. I see. Well, sometimes you miss stuff like that. Is he still there? Yeah, he is. Good, I'll tell him about the expulsion and we'll go through the rest of the schedule. You keep going. With that said, Class 1A and Eraserhead kept walking while 1B went on the opposite direction, with only 2 students staying behind. One was Midoriya, who stopped and turned around once she walked past the other student, a guy with blonde hair styled like an explosion. I get the feeling we've met before. And then, without warning, Midoriya remembered when she first discovered her quirk, in particular the one guy who tried to keep everybody's attention on him and failing. Wait a minute. Midoriya's eyes widened. Katsuki Bakugo? Yeah, that's me, the guy narrowed his eyes. And you must be Mo Midoriya, right? The greenette stood stunned for a few seconds, before nodding in response. I'll admit your name sounds cute, but that's about all you got going for yourself, Bakugo lowered his eyelids. If you don't want to feel like a waste of time, you better lower your expectations. Midoriya raised an eyebrow in confusion. So Bakugo kindly explained. Class 1B has always been seen as the inferior class compared to 1A. All the pro heroes that come from that class are said to be less popular than those from 1A. Even the number 2 hero, Endeavor, who comes from 1B, is less popular than All Might, who came from 1A. In other words, Bakugo shot a cocky look at Midoriya. You were declared nothing but an extra before the school year even started. With that said, Bakugo pocketed his hands and continued his walk to the auditorium, leaving just as Midoriya's backpack vibrated vividly. I agree, Kumatan. Midoriya narrowed her eyes. I don't like him one bit. With that said, Midoriya turned around and kept walking to her classroom, sporting an enraged expression the whole way through. One thing had become clear to her. Katsuki Bakugo had gained a powerful enemy. Mom, is it true that heroes from UA's Class 1B are inferior to 1A heroes? This was the question Midoriya posed to her mother, Inko Midoriya, as she served dinner. And, for all intents and purposes, Inko answered calmly. Where did you get that idea, Mo? Well, I just met somebody at UA who said that. Midoriya folded her arms. And while I don't believe what he says, it made me wonder if that was true or not. Well, Mo, you can't really believe what somebody tells you all the time, Inko replied. Unless we're talking about a teacher who works at UA? No, he was a student. Then you definitely shouldn't worry about what he said. He probably heard those rumors somewhere and decided to believe them. Midoriya, however, wasn't quite convinced. Do you know anything about those rumors? Oh boy, Inko snickered. I just opened a can of worms, didn't I? The woman chuckled for a while, her daughter looking at her with confusion, until eventually she explained. It's a common fact that when a particular trend starts in a school or classroom, the school or classroom becomes known for that trend. For example, pro heroes that come from Shiketsu more often than not focus on stealth or gathering information, and that's if they're not underground heroes outright. So, how does UA fit that idea? What trends does it have? Well, it does create some of the most competent pro heroes in Japan, so there's that. Inko scratched her chin and hummed. Perhaps the rivalry between the A and B classes could count as a trend? Rivalry? Mo, it's no secret that all hero courses develop a rivalry between each other, but UA has to have the biggest problem with it. No matter the year, the class's rivalry persists, to the point that their ability to work is hindered because of it. They focus more on surpassing each other than learning to work together. Is that really a bad thing, though? Midoriya shrugged. I've heard and seen several pro heroes work just fine on their own. But there are just as many pro heroes who work in a team, or work best in tandem with another hero. But actually, I feel like we've lost track of the question, so just forget what that guy said and just focus on your studies, okay, Mo? Midoriya nodded, then began eating her food. By the way, I was planning to go to the gym. And where did this idea come from? Well, I saw a lot of my classmates and students from other courses, and they have some pretty toned muscles. Midoriya took another bite of her food casually. That, and I realized that my quirk doesn't really give me any strength myself. I thought you were gonna try build up your stamina, since your quirk seems to be powered by it. That's a good idea too. And when were you planning to go to the gym? Today after dinner. Inko paused and looked at her daughter with disbelief. What? Which gym are we talking about? There's a new one that opened near the train station a week ago. I was planning to go there. Mo, that place closes down at 8 p.m. Yes, so? It's 7:30 p.m. Midoriya paused for a moment to think about the revelation, and what came out of her mouth soon after could only be described as a scream that would out present Nick's quirk to shame. Midoriya quickly checked her drawer, Kumatan sitting on top of it as she looked at her creator with a mix of confusion and concern. I don't think I can bring you to the gym, Kumatan, sorry. The living doll tilted her head. Kumatan? Yeah, I'm heading to the gym today, Midoriya hastily answered as she quickly switched clothes. Mom just made me realize that I haven't really worked my body out in the years since I discovered my quirk, and I need to rectify that. Kumatan tilted her head, prompting Midoriya to explain further. Yes, I know, my quirk doesn't need me to be buff or strong to activate, but I need to compensate somehow. Midoriya flexed her slender arms. Just look at this noodle arm. And that's not the only musculature I'm lacking. Kumatan just rolled her eyes unimpressed as Midoriya rapidly listed the parts of her body she found lacking. I don't have any biceps or whatever those chest muscles are called, my tummy's got no abs at all, and look at these legs. Midoriya grabbed her left leg and raised it as she put on a stocking. I mean sure, they got volume compared to everything else, but they look more like radishes, Kumatan. Radishes. Kumatan. I know radishes are delicious, but unlike them, my legs aren't edible. Midoriya sighed. Anyway, I think I'm done. What do you think? Kumatan scanned her maker's current outfit. A shirt that was white at the top but the bottom resembled blue waved, a beige skirt, matching stockings, and black shoes. The living doll hummed, then did the 50-50 gesture with a shrug. Yeah, maybe this isn't that good, Midoriya then checked her watch. But I don't have time to change. The gym will close soon. Midoriya grabbed her backpack and bolted out the door, bidding farewell to the living doll and her mother before heading straight to the gym. Midoriya ran as fast as she could towards the door, barging and hoping that she had arrived before the gym had to close. She crashed into something tough and hard, sending her falling straight to the ground. Ow, my nose. Hey, are you okay? Midoriya looked up, and she was honestly surprised by who she saw. He was a large man with blonde hair styled up at the tip, blue eyes with no scara whatsoever, and muscles comparable to those of All Might himself. Why, I'm Fayao. The boy helped Midoriya stand up and lead her to a bench, where she sat down as the guy took out some bandages. After a moment, Midoriya's nose was bandaged, and the guy returned with a water bottle. Here, a water bottle for the troubles, the guy said as he handed the bottle to the greenette. Sorry for hurting your nose again. No, it's fine, I should have seen where I was going, Midoriya replied. Thanks again for the bandage. I'm Midoriya, by the way. Mirio Togata, the guy said, forming a smile. Nice to meet you. Midoriya nodded and turned back to her water bottle as Mirio looked up and folded his arms. But came here because I heard of this place and how it was a 2-in-1 deal, allowing people to either use their quirks or train their bodies, rather than one or the other, he said, oblivious to the light shining next to him. So, I decided to give it a shot, and I gotta say, I'm not disappointed. Mirio faced Midoriya. But enough about Dash. What he saw once he did left him stunned. Midoriya was seemingly kissing a girl as tall as her and made of translucent plastic, revealing she was filled completely with water. Said water slowly drained until it reached her neck, upon which she and Midoriya separated. Man, I really needed that, the greenette chirped, wiping the liquid off her mouth as she and the girl faced Mirio. Were you saying something, Togata-kun? Umi-tan. Mirio shook his head and returned to reality. I'm sorry, but who's the girl next to you? You mean Umi-tan? She's the Gijinka of the water bottle you just gave me, Midoriya explained as the living bottle waved hello. I made her with my quirk. Your quirk? Mirio scratched his chin. So, your quirk lets you create sentient beings? I just touch a non-living object, activate my quirk, and bam, the Gijinka is born. They stay around until I lose consciousness, and do everything I tell them to. Midoriya explained cheerfully. Umi-tan, offer Togata-kun some water. The living bottle nodded and approached Mirio, only for the guy to stop her in place with his hand. I'm fine, thanks. Besides, I need to get going. Mirio stood up and bowed. Sorry for what happened again. I hope we can meet again. Midoriya returned the bow, and Mirio promptly left the gym, Midoriya and Umi-tan looking at him as he left. Umi-tan. Yeah, I think you made him feel awkward. Umi-tan. Huh. You're blaming me? Umi-tan. Yeah, when you put it like that, it makes a lot of sense. Midoriya sighed and stood up. Well, I should probably look around and see if anybody I know is here. Umi-tan quickly grabbed her maker's arm. Don't worry, I'm going to be careful. I'll just see if any of my classmates are here, maybe try out some of the smaller weights, and that'll be it. And then, Midoriya shot a saddened frown at Umi-tan. To try avoid making people feel more awkward, though, I'll have to undo you, Umi-tan. Sorry. The living bottle nodded, and Midoriya simply snapped her fingers to turn her back into a water bottle, which was half empty. Or maybe it was half full. It was half something, basically. With that done, Midoriya pocketed the bottle and began walking around. As soon as she left the room, she found herself walking among several adults and teenagers, each using weighted equipment. Midoriya-san, is that you? Midoriya stopped on her tracks and turned around, coming face to face with her ponytailed redhead classmates, who was wearing a black shirt with jeans and red shoes. Yeah, it's me, the greenette said cheerfully. And you're one of my classmates. It's Suka Kendo, the redhead answered. Say, sorry if this seems a little sudden, but what happened to your nose? Midoriya reached for her bandaged nose, and explained as she waved her hand in a dismissive manner. Oh, I ran into a guy's abs on the way here, and I crashed hard enough to break it. Good lord. Kendo frowned. Are you okay? Do you need to go to the hospital? Relax, Kendo-san, I'm fine. I'll just need to rest for a couple of days and then I'll be good as new. Kendo frowned and folded her arms. Still, does it hurt? A little bit, but not a lot. You may have to skip the quirk apprehension test tomorrow. That is, assuming Vlad King-sensei doesn't have an alternative planned. Skip it? Why? Kendo lowered her eyelids. Midoriya-sen, your nose is broken. Those things take time to heal, time that will get longer if you end up hurting yourself during the test. Midoriya pouted angrily. Come to think of it, maybe you should go home now, unless you're planning to use the smaller equipment? Yes, totally. Midoriya chirped. I'll just use one of those small weight thingies. Kendo hummed for a moment, but seeing the excited expression on Midoriya's expression, she sighed. Fine, but I'll watch over you as you do it, all right? Woohoo! Kendo lead Midoriya to a bench, and brought a pair of small dumbbells, which she handed to Midoriya soon after. The redhead sat down, and Midoriya promptly grabbed and lifted the weights, taking a deep breath once she did and pausing before lifting them up and down, one at a time. That's a good start, Midoriya-san. Thanks. The greenette kept lifting the dumbbells as she began to look around again. This time, however, besides the adults and teenagers, she also looked over at Kendo. Her clothing didn't leave much to the imagination. She wasn't as muscular as, say, a bodybuilder, but her body definitely had more tone and muscle than any other girl she'd seen before. Her arms, in particular, were fairly muscular and, "Oi, Midoriya-san," Kendo said, snapping her fingers in Midoriya's face. "Stay focused. If you lose focus on the weights, you might end up losing your strength and dropping them." "Oh right, sorry," the greenette replied. "Say, Kendo-san?" "Yes, Midoriya-san?" "You seem to be pretty toned." Midoriya raised an eyebrow. "How long did you train to get those muscles?" I never really counted the years I spent training." Kendo raised her head and scratched her chin. "But if you're asking me, I'd say half a decade." "Half a dash?" Midoriya grimaced and lowered her head. "I don't have that time." Kendo chuckled. "Why do you need to get toned? Are you worried you put on weight?" "No, that's not it. I just thought that I haven't really trained my body ever since I awakened my quirk. I've never really worked to get stronger myself, I just let my creations do their thing." "And so, you want to get muscles so you can be a little stronger in case you can't use your quirk?" Midoriya nodded. "I also need to develop my stamina, since that's what fuels my quirk. I got some good stamina right now, but if I were to train it, I might be able to do more things like at the entrance exam without fainting." Kendo smiled in amusement. "You want to turn the 0-pointer into a baby again?" "No, more like I want to turn it into a proper girl." "I see." Kendo put a hand on Midoriya's shoulder. "But you're not trying to get strong for the quirk apprehension test tomorrow, right?" That was an idea, but even Kumitan thought it was ridiculous when I brought it up to her. "I see. Well, I think I can help you with that." Midoriya perked up. "Really? I know a few exercises that can really help build up your endurance and stamina," Kendo winked. "We'd need to wait until your nose heals, but once it does, I can start training you right away." Midoriya chirped up, put the dumbbells down, and promptly hugged Kendo, rubbing their cheeks together as she laughed joyfully. "Thanks, Kendo-san." "No problem, but turn it down a notch, okay? You might hurt your nose." But Midoriya kept hugging her and laughing, Kendo eventually joining the laughter as she returned the hug. A single smooch from Recovery Girl, and Midoriya was walking alongside her classmates towards the fabled quirk apprehension test, feeling a little groggy from the side effects of the nurse's quirk. "Thanks a lot, Recovery Girl." "No problem, kid. Just don't go running into people's abs again, okay?" Midoriya giggled as she got off the bed and left, leaving Recovery Girl to add her previous statement to the list of things she'd never thought she'd hear. Midoriya was now at the PE grounds, donning the UAP uniform and standing next to her classmates as Vlad King spoke. "All right, students, today we'll have the quirk apprehension test that Eraserhead mentioned yesterday. The basic idea behind the test is to see how physically fit you are compared to how well you can use your quirk. Having great control of your quirk means nothing if your body has to wither in exchange." Kendo was the first to raise her arm. "Vlad King-sensei, what's going to happen to whoever ranks last?" I figured someone was going to ask about that after Eraserhead mentioned expelling someone, Vlad King sighed. "And I'll tell you right away, don't worry, nobody's going to be expelled. However, like I said, the point of the test is to see how physically healthy you are. Those who rank the lowest will have to do extra exercising when we get to training. No more, no less." The entire class sighed in relief, and quickly prepared as Vlad King continued. "We're going to put you through a set of small tests. You can use your quirks during these exercises, but you'll be required to redo the exercise without it if you do." "What?" The blonde guy with blue eyes, his name was Minoma, right? Exclaimed. "That's just unfair." Again, using your quirk and using your own physical strength are two different things. Sometimes the difference between them is insignificant, but we still have to do this just in case. "Now, everybody ready?" The students nodded. Then let's begin. The first test was a simple run through a long line. 2 students stood side by side, and as soon as they heard the gunshot, they were supposed to run as fast as they could, a robot standing at the end to count the time it took for them to arrive. Midoriya was the third to go for the test, alongside a horned, equine girl. Ready. Midoriya prepped, and as soon as the gunshot was heard, she ran as fast as she could, only to be stunned by the equine girl galloping on all fours. 20 seconds. Getting an idea as Vlad King reacted in confusion, Midoriya got on all fours and began galloping at full throttle. 40 seconds. Once she stopped, passing by a flabbergasted Vlad King, she found herself staring at the equine girl, whose tail wagged as she kept staring at the greenette. Mia! Nay! The equine girl chirped back. Midoriya tilted her head. Emi! The girl shook her head. Nay! Nay! The horse girl nodded cheerfully. Nay! Midoriya soon returned the smile. Nay! Nay! And as the duo had their neighing fit, Kendo and Monoma watched them with deadpan expressions. So, it looks like we got a pair of contenders for the little sister of the class. A pair? Kendo shook her head. I think it's rather clear Midoriya-san's the little sister. I mean, Tsunatori-san is kinda childish. Perhaps, but Midoriya-san. She's on a whole nother level. Monoma hummed and kept looking as the girls began chasing each other, giggling as they did. Next test was the standing long jump or whatever that was called. Midoriya was gonna go second after a gray-haired girl with a bang covering one of her eyes. Said girl didn't get the memo, however, as she ran to the edge, jumped, and spread her arms as she was surrounded by a gray aura, levitating above the sand until it dissipated, letting her land on the ground. Pull the jazz hands, move. Midoriya quickly imitated her. She ran and tried to do the same, only to fall face-first into the sand. Midoriya-san. Yanagi-san. You're not supposed to run at the standing long jump. Vlad King stated in disapproval. We're not. The rest of the tests didn't go as well as Midoriya had hoped. Lifting weights? A guy with a glue dispenser for a head lifted a pair of heavy weights easily. Side steps? The mushroom girl was much more agile than she expected. And don't even get started on the other ones. Midoriya still can't believe the blonde guy had such sick dance moves. Now came the final test, the ball throw. Those who were called had to stand on a circle and throw a softball as hard as they could, a robot standing nearby to count the distance they reached. Alright, time to begin the final test. For the first one to throw, Kendo-san, come here. The redhead grabbed the ball, walked to the circle, then winded up before throwing as hard as she could. 62 meters. Midoriya's jaw fell a bit, Kendo closing it as the greenette was called next. She walked to the man, grabbed the ball, and sighed as he remarked. Say, Midoriya-san, I've noticed you haven't used your quirk during any of the tests. Is there a reason for that? I just didn't think it would help me, Midoriya said. Then got an idea. But I think I can use it now. Can I? Be my guest. Midoriya eagerly walked to the circle, touched the softball, and activated her quirk. The softball turned into a tiny girl not much bigger than Kumatan wearing a white dress and with a circular head with hair based on the softball's design. Softball tan. Midoriya eyed the girl, they shared an understanding nod, and then the greenette grabbed Softball Tan's arms and spun in place, throwing the entity as far as she could. 43 meters. Was what the robot said once the girl hit the ground. Just that? Midoriya asked. Okay, so, your quirk lets you turn objects into small humanoids, Vlad King casually remarked. However, doesn't that also increase their weight compared to the object they were made of? Midoriya thought about it, then face-bombed. Midoriya-san, could you please dash? Yeah, I'm on it. Midoriya snapped her fingers, and Softball Tan exploded, turning back into a softball as Midoriya walked to the object and grabbed it. I'm so sorry I hurt you, Softball Tan. I didn't mean to do it. Dude, it's a softball now. Monoma called. It can't hear you. How dare you? Softball. Midoriya threw the ball at Monoma, hitting him hard enough to knock him over as he cried in pain. My nose. After a quirkless softball throw from Midoriya, the results were in, and the students were back in the classroom, waiting for their first class. Needless to say, Midoriya was quite upset over her 15th spot placement. I can't believe I ranked so low. Hey, at least you did better than some of us, a brown-haired guy with bug eyes remarked. I still can't believe I ranked 19th. Hey, look at the bright side, you weren't rock bottom like Minoma-kun, a girl with green hair and sharp teeth, ranked 12th, remarked with a sly grin. Shut up, will you? The greenette laughed out loud while Midoriya sulked on her desk, quickly getting Kendo's attention. Not feeling well? I can't believe I trained yesterday for nothing. You lifted a pair of dumbbells and that was it. Plus, you did it right before the day of the test. Kinda unrealistic to expect to become fit enough to ace the test with that little workout. It's not my fault my quirk didn't demand I turn into an Amazonian like you, Midoriya pouted. Not that I'll have a choice in the matter moving on. I'm gonna be part of those who have extra training piled on them. Well, at least you didn't do as bad as Minoma-kun, the other greenette chirped. You can always be proud of that. You're never gonna let me forget about that, are you? Minoma sighed. Nope. Figures. Point is, Midoriya-san. Kendo put a hand on Midoriya's shoulder. Don't beat yourself up for it. You did the best you could and that's what matters. Midoriya flashed a smile at Kendo, but the reassuring atmosphere dissipated as Vlad King returned. With Eraserhead in tow. Eraserhead? Minoma asked. What's going on, Vlad King-sensei? Eraserhead just informed me of a change of plans, Vlad King answered, scratching the back of his head. Your hero costumes are in the dressing rooms. Go there, get dressed, and head to Training City Omicron. The students looked confused, prompting Eraserhead to drop the bombshell. Because we're gonna have a joint training session. Class 1B stepped into the place known as Training City Omicron, covering their eyes as the heavy sunlight filtered through the city. They were all currently wearing their hero costumes as requested and were waiting for their sister class to arrive. Some doing so by paying attention to one particular sight, Midoriya's hero costume. At least what they thought was her hero costume. Midoriya-san, Kendo blurted, tilting her head. What are you wearing? The greenette took a moment to scan her outfit. She was wearing a green sleeveless dress with a pair of pockets, a white, long-sleeved undershirt, a light green apron, dark green shoes, and white knee socks. This is my hero costume. I based it off an old fantasy book I read a long time ago, Midoriya answered with a shrug. Is there a problem with it? No, I guess we just didn't think you'd wear something so simple for your costume. Kendo scratched the back of her head. You kinda look like a fairy tale character too. Midoriya tilted her head. You say that like it's a bad thing. I know I'm probably gonna be told to shut up for this, Minoma remarked, getting everyone's attention. But our sister class has arrived. Everyone turned around and saw Class 1A entering the city, wearing their hero costumes as well. Alongside them were the homeroom teachers, alongside All Might. Kendo exclaimed in shock. Ha! Yes, it is I, All Might, the muscular blonde man exclaimed, raising a hand as he walked alongside his fellow teachers. And yes, I will be your teacher for Hero Basics 101. No FANG way, the insectoid student spoke. We got the actual #1 hero teaching us. I'm so glad I got here. Kendo was the first to walk up to All Might and offer her hand. It's an honor and a please to meet you, sir. The pleasure is mine, Kendo Shaojo, All Might answered as he shook her hand. Now, we got an important exercise to do today, so let's get right to it, shall we? Everybody nodded in agreement, and the classes followed All Might into a small room with a setup of security cameras installed on a wall. So, what the hell are we doing? Asked the crude voice of Bakugu. You'll get your answer soon enough, Bakugu-kun, Eraserhead stated sternly. Just be patient. The guy rolled his eyes and looked elsewhere. As he did, Midoriya kept a stern glance at him, which he eventually noticed. If you looking at Pipsqueak? Midoriya silently broke eye contact with him and focused on the screens, which only served to further aggravate him. Hey, I'm talking to you. Midoriya didn't respond. At least until Bakugu grabbed and pulled her by her collar. Let me go. Suddenly, an intense aura filled the atmosphere as Bakugo did as demanded, but not by his own will. He slowly turned back to see Eraserhead, glaring at him with glowing red eyes, a perfect demonstration for his quirk. "I have already spoken to you about your temper, Pukun," he sternly hissed. "I suggest you either calm down or quit this room immediately. I'm not going to bother giving you a second warning. Understood?" Bakugo took a deep breath and nodded. Eraserhead then turned off his quirk and began applying something on his eyes while Bakugo helped Midoriya stand up, whispering, "This isn't over, Pipsqueak." Midoriya broke free from his grasp as soon as she stood up, and she got an "I'm watching you" gesture from the blonde before he turned back to the screens. "Great, we haven't even started yet, and already we're being pestered by Class 1A, Monoma quietly muttered. If Eraserhead hadn't done what he did dash. "Yes, Monoma-kun, we know," the insectoid student whispered back. "Now could you shut up before you get us in trouble too?" Monoma folded his arms and groaned as the teachers finally began explaining the exercise. "What we're going to do today is a hostage exercise," Vlad King spoke. "There will be 2 groups, heroes and villains, each composed of 2 people, and the villain team will have a hostage that the hero team has to rescue. I guess that explains why it's a joint training session. With 5 people each, it'd be pretty short with only 1 class," Kendo remarked. "But I get the feeling there's another reason behind the training session. In the world of heroism, you never know who you'll fight, nor who you'll team up with," Eraserhead stated. "Sometimes you'll have face a villain with a perfect counter to your quirk, or one that's so weak they barely register. At the same time, you can either find yourself teaming up with an old friend, a brand new pro-hero, or a pro-hero you can't stand." All Might added, "This exercise will help you prepare for such situations." "Okay, and how are we gonna decide who acts as what?" Monoma asked. All Might spun in place for a moment, then slid to the side, revealing a box standing on a small pedestal. "We're gonna decide with lottery." Silence enveloped the room as the students tried to process what they were just told. All Might soon turned quiet as well, forcing Eraserhead and Vlad King to interfere. The box has 16 notes, each sporting either an H or a V, alongside a number. So, H1 and V1 would signify those who are on the heroes and villains team for the first exercise. You're going to go to the box, enter your hands in it, and retrieve one of the notes. Whatever note you get is what team you'll be a part of. "Okay, that's great to know and all," Midoriya shrugged. "But how are we gonna decide who's the hostage?" It was then that all of Class 1B turned to look at Midoriya, then all of Class 1A, and finally the teachers, their stares uninterrupted as the greenette looked at them with puzzled eyes. And then they all suddenly turned to look at Monoma. Monoma folded his arms in begrudging acceptance. "Just to point this out, we still need 3 more hostages. I know it sounds terrible out of context, but it's the truth." "I can be a hostage," said the invisible girl of Class 1A. "And how, exactly, is anybody supposed to know whether you've escaped or not, Hagakure-san?" the tailed 1A student asked. "Oh yeah, I didn't think about that." "I suggest Bakugo-kun becomes a hostage," the frog girl said. "You, Kermit, you be the hostage." "All right, everybody pipe down, you're giving me a headache," Eraserhead sighed. "Listen, let's just get the numbers first, and whoever doesn't get a number becomes a hostage, all right?" "Sounds fine by me." Soon after, the students quickly gathered around the box and grabbed their pieces of paper. Eventually, only 4 remained, and they became the hostages for the exercise. Surprisingly, Monoma wasn't the first to complain about this. It was the pink girl from 1A. "Man, this sucks. I wanted to be a hero. And I wanted some peace and quiet, and yet I'm stuck teaching noisy little brats like you," Eraserhead growled, glaring directly at her eyes. "Just grin and bear it for now, Ashido-san." The pink girl crossed her arms and pouted, slapping Monoma's hand away as soon as he tried to provide sympathy. Meanwhile, Midoriya couldn't help but grimace at her paper. Not because she had gotten she didn't want, she got a paper with an H written on it. And even though it was explicitly an H1 paper, meaning her team would go first, that didn't bother her either. No, what bothered and even outright terrified her was the fact she got Bakugo as a partner. and unlike her, he seemed to see the team up with a sense of condescending amusement. Well, this wasn't quite what I meant when I said this wasn't over, but we gotta work with what we got. Bakugo glared at Midoriya. You better get ready to pull your own weight, 'cause I'm not going to hold your hand here. Oh, trust me, Midoriya narrowed her eyes. The last thing I want you to do is hold me. Okay, heroes and villains. Head forward to the city, and good luck. The teams, alongside an annoyed Monoma, walked to the building as the screens turned on, revealing the interiors as well as the outside of one of the buildings. All Might then changed the feed until they found the teams, and primarily Bakugo and Midoriya, standing outside the building. And now comes the moment of truth. Eraserhead folded his arms as he faced the screens. I hope your students don't cause as much of a ruckus as mine. I hope that too, but knowing the hero course, anything could happen. Eraserhead rubbed his forehead. Vlad King, I swear to God, if you just jinxed it I'm gonna be more than enough to deal with these villains, got it? Bakugo told an uninterested Midoriya. I want you to stay here. If you go inside, you'll only get in the way. Normally I wouldn't mind staying as far away from you as possible, but we're, a team? Midoriya responded. I'm pretty sure that means we're supposed to work together. The only teams that can work together effectively are those where the partners are equals, complementary, or the power gap between them isn't too big, Bakugo stated as he stomped into the building. There's no synergy between us, so really, just stay here and wait. Midoriya gritted her teeth and let out a growl that was probably supposed to be threatening, but was far too adorable to work. To each their own, huh? Fine. She calmed down once Bakugo was gone from view, and she smiled, reaching for her pocket and taking something out before using her quirk. I just so happened to prepare for this. Monoma sighed wearily. He was currently sitting at the top floor of the building, tapping his arm as his kidnappers, Yaoyorozu and a guy with tired eyes, tried discussing strategy. Okay, so, there has to be something we can do with him, Yaoyorozu hummed. Some kind of offer for his release, maybe? Since when do villains do that? In fact, since when do pro-heroes even humor demands from villains? The guy pocketed his hands. Besides, even if we could make a demand, how will we do that? We don't have any equipment to make our voices known. Yaoyorozu raised an eyebrow. I thought your quirk involved your voice somehow? That's something I want to keep just in case we need it, the guy replied. What about you? Can you use your quirk to create something to watch the heroes? Getting an idea, Yaoyorozu snapped her fingers, and her stomach glowed before creating a mini helicopter with a camera and controller with a monitor connected to the camera. She promptly used the controller to take the mini helicopter outside, wherein she inspected the area underneath them and saw something interesting. They're not outside, Yaoyorozu stated as she undid the megaphone. They must have entered the building already. That or they just left. Yaoyorozu shot a look of disbelief at her partner. What kind of pro-hero just leaves a scene of a crime like that? I've seen it happen on the news. I've seen it too, Monoma sighed. It's really depressing. Suddenly, an explosion was heard outside, and when Yaoyorozu checked her monitor, the screen was filled with static. What the dash? Bombs away. The wall near the villains blew up, and from it entered Midoriya, sitting on a green airplane that was being driven by a girl so small, only her head could be seen on the driver's seat. Plane tan. Where the hell did this plane come from? The guy asked in disbelief. Wouldn't you like to know? Midoriya replied with a mocking tone. Now if you excuse us, we're taking your hostage with us. The plane flew around the villains, who whispered something as Midoriya grabbed Monoma and shoved him into her seat. The pair tightly held together as Plane Tan began to fly away. You know, Midoriya-san? I'm impressed. Monoma raised an eyebrow. Not a lot of people would be willing to stay this close to me without being bribed. To be honest, the idea was that I'd drive Plane Tan, and this seat would be free for you to hop in, but I didn't consider using my quirk would give the plane an actual driver, not just make it alive, Midoriya giggled. But don't worry, you're safe now. Suddenly, Plane Tan flew in place, and upon looking back, the duo saw Yaoyorozu having tied a rope at Plane Tan's wing, which she slowly began pulling back. Okay, never mind, guess you're not as safe as I thought. Let me try something. Midoriya eyed Yaoyorozu and shouted, "Hey, Yaoyorozu-senpai. I know he might seem cute, but he's actually a pain. It's not a good idea to date this guy." Date? Yaoyorozu blushed as her grip loosened, forcing her partner to grab the rope and pull back in her behalf. Welp, it was worth a shot. No, it wasn't. Monoma stated. Why did you think that would work, anyway? Midoriya shrugged. I thought this was one of those times when a girl kidnaps a guy out of love. She already has a guy next to her. Maybe he's not her type. You know what? Forget it, there's no point arguing with you. Monoma raised his hand. Just give me a high five. Excuse me? High five, Midoriya-san. High five. I mean, I feel like that's something we should do after escaping the villains, but if you insist. Midoriya gave Monoma the high five he requested, and he gave her a peace sign before he stood up and jumped off the plane. As he went down, he grabbed one of his clocks and activated the quirk he copied from Midoriya-san. The clock glowed, and before Monoma hit the ground, he found his descent slowly stopping, accompanied by him landing on someone's arms. More specifically, his back was being held by a pair of tiny hands. This someone turned out to be the Gijinkified clock, resembling a small, female version of Monoma with many clocks around her person. Clock Tan, she chirped as they hit the ground. Wow, that's an insane quirk, Yaoyorozu remarked. Hey, partner, could you keep this girl occupied? I'll try to stop the hostage from escaping. The guy rolled his eyes. Don't go just yet, give me a second. The guy pulled as hard as he could and threw the plane and Midoriya into the ground, the former turning back into a toy plane once they hit the ground. Plane 10. No. The villain team stood in front of the greenette, who hugged the toy plane defensively. Do whatever you want with me, villains. I'll never tell you anything, she snapped, before waving at Yaoyorozu. Also, hi, Yaoyorozu-senpai. What are you doing here? Ugh, not this again, Yaoyorozu groaned. Let me handle this, the guy remarked, turning to Midoriya as he smirked. Are you sure you're not telling us anything? Yes, I'm Dash. And then, without warning, Midoriya's eyes turned blank and she dropped the toy plane. Stand up. Midoriya obliged. Now, tell us, what does your quirk do? It lets me turn non-living objects into cute anime girlfriends. Cute anime what now? The guy asked. Girls. Cute anime girls. And from the look of it, those girls can pack a punch. The guy smirked and looked at Yaoyorozu. Looks like I'm gonna need your help, Yaoyorozu-san. Well, this took a turn for the worse, that's for certain, Hagakure remarked. Who's that guy that just caught Midoriya-san? The small guy from 1B asked. That kid you're seeing right now, who just got Midoriya-san under his control, is the replacement of the guy I expelled not too long ago, Eraserhead explained. His name is Hitoshi Shinso, and he was originally part of the Gen Ed course. What did he do? Kendo asked. It's like he just said something and in the blink of an eye, Midoriya-san was paralyzed. His quirk's called brainwashing, and it lets him mind control someone if they answer one of his questions. And such a crazy quirk was stuck in Gen Ed? Ashido exclaimed. If one former Gen Ed student can brainwash people, what the hell can the rest of the course do? Truth be told, Shinso-kun here is a rare exception of a strong quirk in the Gen Ed course, but that's for another day, Eraserhead said. For now, just be glad he's on our class now. Then Vlad King turned to All Might. Monoma-kun clearly ran away from the building a while ago. Wouldn't that serve as the point where the exercise stops? It's not that simple, Vlad King. It's one thing to take a hostage away from villains. It's another thing to keep them safe. So many hostage situations have escalated or gotten worse because a pro-hero wasn't quite thorough when dealing with it, Eraserhead added. In this case, the exercise requires the heroes to take care of the villains. So while the hostage has escaped, at best they're just hiding. The exercise will continue until either the heroes take care of the villains, or the villains escape. What? Ida exclaimed in disbelief. Aizawa-sensei, you didn't tell us anything about this before the exercise started. Of course I didn't. My job is to guide you in your journey to become pro-heroes, not to hold your hand while doing so, Eraserhead sternly replied, focusing solely on the screen. If you really think you can half-butt heroism like that, it might be for the better that you think of another road to take. Ida stood stunned at the statement, but before he could make an argument, everybody saw Midoriya marching down the cameras. Now watch and learn. You're gonna see what happens when you get cocky. Bakugo walked through the hallways, scanning his surroundings for any sign of the villains. Alright, if I was a piece of sheet being held hostage by a pair of assholes, where would I be? Bakugo sighed. Outside. The guy stopped and turned around to see a pair of blank eyes in the distance, being the only things he could see in the darkness that enveloped the floor in front of him. Okay, those aren't glowing. How the F are those eyes the only thing I'm seeing? In fact, Bakugo pounded his fists, then opened them and released firecrackers. Hey, who the F are you? The eyes walked out of the darkness to reveal themselves as Midoriya. Ugh, god damn it, Pipsqueak, didn't I tell you not to go here? Bakugo snapped. And actually, how the hell did you go ahead of me? Suddenly, dozens more blank eyes appeared in the darkness as Midoriya narrowed her eyes. The hell? The eyes left the darkness to reveal themselves to be a group of small girls riding an assortment of weapons and vehicles. Tanks, planes, broomsticks, stuff like that. And once they were all visible, they focused their glares on Bakugo. What the F dash? Midoriya raised her arm, then motioned it forward, exclaiming in a quiet voice. Attack! Back where we left off, Bakugo tried to process what was happening. Not only was the little green Pipsqueak from 1B being more of a nuisance than ever, but she had put him on the defensive with, of all things, an army of child-sized girls who could only say their names. Could this get any worse? Or dumber? So this is what your quirk does, Pipsqueak? Bakugo growled as he blasted some of the Gijinkas away. Create an army of tiny brats? Midoriya remained silent, quickly getting on Bakugo's nerves. Well, no matter. Bakugo smirked. Because with these types of quirks, there's always one big, fatal flaw. Before he could be bombarded with more Gijinkas, Bakugo blasted forward, the force of his explosions. If you hurt the user, the quirk's over. Bakugo aimed his fist forward and released a giant explosion, expecting the Gijinkas to cease to exist as soon as the attack hit. But after a few seconds passed and the Gijinkas remained in place, he knew something was up. Especially when Midoriya promptly grabbed his gauntlet. What? How the F did you dodge that? Then, a closer look at the smoke cloud revealed how a smaller Gijinka flew away, her eyes spiraling with a silly smile as she popped out of existence. You used a decoy? That was the least of Bakugo's worries, however, as Midoriya activated her quirk on his gauntlet, causing it to glow before sending him sliding back with a powerful explosion. Luckily, his now bare arm was practically unscathed, but something else quickly took his attention, the blonde chibi who now held his gauntlet. Gauntlet Tan. Yup, this had just gotten more ridiculous. Monoma and Time Tan hid behind a building and caught his breath, Time Tan staring at him with a little smile. Alright, I think we managed to lose them, but I don't see the exit anywhere, Monoma sighed as he looked around. Ugh, why is it so hard for me to remember where I came from? Time Tan. Monoma looked at his Gijinka with a confused look. What are you trying to say? Time Tan, she chirped while pointing at a spot. Time Tan. Listen, I know you just came into existence, but I need more than just pointing and you saying your name dash. It was then that he realized something. Wait, is your name literally the only thing you can say? Time Tan nodded with an oblivious smile. Oh my lord, I really didn't think this through. Hey, on your defense, nobody really thought anything through. Monoma and Time Tan turned around, and to their shock, Yaoyorozu came into view, hands pocketed in her skirt. I mean, I had a plan, but it kinda went to dust when stuff began happening at random, she added, scratching her chin. Especially when that green-haired girl burst into the building with that airplane. Well, it could have been worse. You and Midoriya-sen could have been paired together instead, Monoma shrugged with a smug smile. If that had happened, this exercise would have been over in 5 seconds. Well, now that I've seen what she can actually do, I can verify that us teaming up would have been quite the synergy, Yaoyorozu shrugged. It's so sad then, that she had to be turned into a minion, Minoma's smug attitude vanished, being immediately replaced with anger. What did you do to Midoriya-san? We didn't hurt her, if that's what you're wondering, but she's definitely going to make things harder for her team, Yaoyorozu smiled. Besides, you have a more pressing matter to tend to. She reached for her stomach, and it glowed as she grabbed the handle of something that came out of it, swiftly pulling out a bat and placing it over her shoulder. And that's the fact I'm here to capture you again. Time-Tan's smile faded, and she leapt straight for Yaoyorozu, who readied her bat. She swung it once. And though she struck her, Time-Tan simply clung to the bat and waited until she lowered it, managing to jump and touch her face even while dizzy from the strike. Once that was done, the Gijinka wobbled back to Minoma, collapsing as soon as she reached him. Time-Tan, are you all right? Minoma asked the obvious question. Why did you do that? Time-Tan opened her mouth, which glowed as a bat emerged from it slowly. Minoma promptly grabbed and pulled it out, causing Time-Tan to cough as she gave him a thumbs up. Realizing what this meant, Minoma grabbed the bat and smiled as he faced Yaoyorozu. Looks like the playing field's even now. Did Midoriya-san's creation just copy Yaoyorozu-san's quirk? Hagakure asked in disbelief. Technically speaking, it's Minoma-kun's creation, Kendo pointed out. Well, one way or another, this farce has gone for long enough, Eraserhead stated. All Might, it's time to put an end to this. The number one hero flinched and faced his fellow teachers before nodding in agreement, grabbing the mic to state. All teams, return to the observation room. We'll redo the first match. Redo the first match? Kendo asked incredulously. Redo the first match? Shinso sighed. And things were just getting interesting here. He snapped his fingers, and at the floors below, Midoriya snapped out of his control and shook her head. What happened? That's what I'd like to know. Moments after yelling that, Bakugo grabbed Midoriya, pulling her up by the neck of her dress as he snapped. Why the hell did you assault me with an army of little girls? In case you didn't notice, genius, I wasn't in control at the time. Midoriya snapped back. One of the villains took me over and forced me to do it. Bakugo's eyes widened. Is that so? Midoriya tilted her head. Believe me. Bakugo threw Midoriya away and stomped deeper into the building, only to be stopped by another statement. Repeat. All teams, return to the observation room. We'll redo the first match. Hearing All Might's voice, Bakugo stopped on his tracks and growled before stomping out of the building, pushing past Midoriya just as she got up. Midoriya pouted as she snapped her fingers, causing the Gijinkas to vanish from existence. With that done, she got up, dusted herself, and left. Back at the observation room, Minoma grumbled to himself, carrying Time-Tan in his arms as he joined the teams. I thought I erased all my Gijinkas? Midoriya pondered out loud. How did that one survive? I have no idea. Minoma shrugged. Maybe because I copied your quirk, she's technically mine? You can figure that out another time. The group turned around and saw the teachers facing them, All Might taking a step forward before saying. So, this first match quickly went out of control, so we decided to change things up a little and try again. However, this is the only time we'll do this, so don't start getting any cheeky ideas, everybody. A sharp-toothed greenette and mushroom-like brunette, both from 1B, snapped their fingers. Now, this change will be simple change in the teams, Vlad King said. Once we tell you the new teams, you'll go back into the building and we'll do the match again, alright? This seems a little redundant, if you ask me, Minoma spoke. Shut up, Hostage Beach, Bakugo growled. I mean you're right, but shut up anyway. Alright, Eraserhead sighed. So, for the new teams. Eraserhead looked at Bakugo, then Shinso, then Yaoyorozu and Midoriya, and just as everybody realized what this meant, the man revealed with a cheeky grin. Yaoyorozu-san, you and Midoriya-san will play the villains. Bakugo-kun, you and Shinso-kun will play the heroes. Yaoyorozu and Midoriya were at the last floor of the building, the latter looking at the plane she used to make Airplane Tan, while the former tied up Minoma and a struggling Time-Tan. Please let me know if it's too tight. No, I'd say it's fine, Minoma replied. Not that I'd know, I've never been kidnapped before. Shut up, Monoma-kun, Midoriya stated. Midoriya-san, that's not nice, Yaoyorozu stated, throwing a disapproving look at the greenette. I know we're supposed to be the villains, but you could at least wait until he says something enraging. Midoriya shrugged. Everybody in my classroom tells him to do that, and nobody bats an eye. Yaoyorozu turned back to Monoma with wide eyes, and the guy could only nod in sad acceptance. Even Time-tan paused to nod as well before continuing her struggle for freedom. Okay then, I'm gonna have to have a word with your class president once this is over. Yaoyorozu scratched her chin. And once we decide on a class president, too. Or do you already have one? We don't. My classroom's got no president either. I could become president. Midoriya chirped. Don't be silly, Midoriya-san, Monoma rolled his eyes. Kids can't become presidents. Midoriya narrowed her eyes. Can I tell him to shut up now? No, because I agree with him. Midoriya pouted so hard, she slapped her cheeks and released the air before flailing her arms while ranting at the top of her lungs. But her childish way of doing so made it too cute to hate. Oh my word, she's too cute for her own good. Yaoyorozu thought while Midoriya kept ranting. After the greenette finally stopped ranting and Yaoyorozu returned to reality, she got an idea. Hey, Midoriya-san? Yeah. You're angry about not getting to beat up Bakugo-san, right? I just ranted about that, yes. Well, if you look at it a little deeper than the surface, Yaoyorozu smiled. This redo might be better, thank you think. Midoriya tilted her head, a puzzled look plastered all across her face. Well, Shinsu-san used his quirk to control you, right? Midoriya pouted again. Yeah. Well, guess what, Midoriya-san? What? Yaoyorozu smirked. Both he and Bakugo-san are part of the opposite team. Midoriya's eyes widened at the statement, and after thinking about it for a moment, she narrowed them and grinned with a hint of malice. In that case, I might have an idea on how we can deal with them. What a coincidence, Yaoyorozu replied, her grin widening. So do I. And she said that while internally squeeing. Oh my word. Even when she's trying to be scary, she's just so dang cute. This is FNG bullshit. Bakugo's words rang across the hallway as he and Shinso walked deeper into the building, Shinso groaning and covering his ears as the walking dynamite continued. First I get assaulted by Pipsqueak's army of children, and now I have to work together with the a-hole. What a lovely vocabulary you got, Shinso said, rolling his eyes. Now would you please stop shouting expletives and lead us to the last room? Are you telling me what to do? As soon as he said that, Bakugo found himself stupefied by Shinso's quirk. Finally, you'll start acting more tolerable, Shinso sighed. Now listen, you're gonna go first and I'll follow your lead. If you detect any danger, stop both of us and point me to it, got it? Bakugo simply nodded. Good, now let's get in. And so, Shinso embraced the peace and quiet of the moment, which lasted all of 2 seconds before the living bomb stopped and pointed at the empty darkness in front of them. For the first few seconds, Shinso couldn't tell what was it that made Bakugo stop, until he heard a plane incoming. And then, a row of pellets emerged from the darkness, which he and Bakugo narrowly dodged. So, she's going with the plane again? Plane 10 came out soon after, but to the hero team's surprise, she had a green visor with a bullseye marker on it. What the? She upgraded her creation. How? Midoriya giggled in joy while using a stick to control where Plane 10 went, watching her fly around through a monitor similar to the one Yaoyorozu used earlier. You're really getting into it, huh? It reminds me of an old game I used to play all the time. Midoriya chirped. It was so much fun. Remember to stay focused, Midoriya-san, Yaoyorozu pointed out. We're still in a training exercise, we need to take out the heroes first and foremost. Yeah, I got it, Midoriya said, waving her hand dismissively. Don't worry, the pellets don't hurt much, but they'll knock them out soon enough. By the way, I wanted to ask, why does your creation shoot pellets instead of bullets? They're non-lethal, and I've learned that my creations won't do anything that I won't do. If I don't kill people, then neither do them. So if you gain the willingness to kill, your creations would gain the ability to kill too? Midoriya let out an amused laugh, her voice becoming much deeper as she gave a simple answer. Yes. Yaoyorozu looked stunned, her shocked expression remaining on her face as she replied. Okay, well, let's focus on the main problem right now. Yeah. Fill Bakugo with pellets. And as the pair kept talking, Time-Tan slid out of the restraining tape and took a closer look at it, before doing something that caught Monoma's attention. She opened her mouth and took out a roll of the same restraining tape, then pointed at Yaoyorozu while Monoma looked incredulously. I really hope me being allowed to keep you wasn't an oversight, Monoma smiled. As for your suggestion, be my guest. Time-Tan flashed a devilish smirk as she unrolled some of the tape. Meanwhile, in the lower floors, Bakugo threw explosions at Plain-Tan, who dodged them easily while giggling at him. And notably, even while mind-controlled, Bakugo hissed and growled at the Gijinka. Her, I guess, occupied. Maybe now's my chance to test out Eraserhead's theory. Hey, how much longer are you gonna spend pestering Bakugo-kun? Plain-Tan dash. Suddenly, Plain-Tan fell numb, and she crashed into a wall, causing such a big explosion that Bakugo was struck by it, releasing himself from Shinsu's mind control. Well, that takes care of that, Shinso remarked as he looked back at the darkness. There doesn't seem to be any other of those things coming towards us, so dash. And then Bakugo threw an explosion at Shinso. You a-hole. I saw everything that happened. Was that the same thing you put Pipsqueak to? Shinso, for his part, calmly stood up, dusted himself, and moved ahead, explaining. I'll explain everything later. For now, since we've dealt with the thing and there doesn't seem to be anything else coming, let's go to the last floor and see what we can find. Not so fast, Hypnoshit. There could be more of those things ahead, you can't be certain they're gone. Then go ahead, I don't care, let's just get this over with. Bakugo fumed and shouted expletives the whole way through. And meanwhile, Midoriya tried to get the monitor signal to turn back to normal, but no matter what she did, it kept showing static. Ugh, Plain-Tan's been taken down and we didn't prepare reinforcements, she whined as she stood up and turned around. This is why I insisted we needed to do that, Yaoyorozu-san. And what did you dash? But once she turned, she was frozen at the sight of Monoma and Time-Tan in freedom, while Yaoyorozu was tied up, flopping around while trying to muggle some warnings. Midoriya's shock quickly turned to anger, though. Yaoyorozu-san, you were supposed to tell me when the hostages got out. Yaoyorozu rolled her eyes, muffling an exasperated, oh my god. And next thing that happened, the hero team arrived. Just in time to see Monoma and Time-Tan on top of the tied-up villain team. About time you arrived, Monoma's smarmy voice spoke. We were starting to worry you chose to ditch us. And finally, everybody at the observation room looked stunned at the sequence of events, to the point Eraserhead straight up said, well, I've seen enough. And so, he walked away. Wait, Eraserhead. The exercise isn't over yet. I'll be back soon enough, keep going without me. There was a slight truth to Eraserhead's statement, but not in the way everybody thought. Alright, here's the information I could gather regarding Midoriya's quirk. He said that as he put a small file on Principal Nizu's desk, the small cryptid smiling as he grabbed it. Just as reliable as ever, Eraserhead. Thanks for gathering this for me. More than a thanks, I want an explanation, Eraserhead stated, folding his arms. Why was this information so urgent that you needed to fabricate an entire exercise just to get it? Well, you see, Eraserhead, it's common knowledge that the stronger a quirk is, the more difficult it is to properly restrain it. Eraserhead raised an eyebrow. Basically ensure that its power doesn't grow until it threatens society. And with the description Midoriya-san's quirk, I feel like she can grow to become that powerful. Okay, but why only her? My class has its fair share of students with crazy strong quirks dash, who come from families I can easily ask for information, which I did. Endeavor, the Yaoyorosis, I just politely ask and they give me all the info I need. But Midoriya's different. Eraserhead's confusion grew deeper. She doesn't come from a high-status family, or even a family of heroes or villains. I could barely find her relatives besides her mother, and even she seemed unsure of what to say. So So, erase her head. We need to take precautions with Midoriya-san. And then I made some friends, and then we went on an exercise with the sister class together, and I got paired with the worst 1A student, got brainwashed, and created an army of adorable little girls twice. That lightning speed summary was said by Midoriya to her mother, who paused her eating to process everything that she was just told. Oh, and then I got scolded. Apparently not having a backup plan in case anything went wrong is a bad thing. And is that really all that you were scolded for? Pretty much. Inko lowered her eyelids. Okay, I was also scolded for being easily brainwashed by my opponent, but can you blame me? I didn't know he could do that. That's the entire joke of these exercises, Mo, to prepare you for anything when you're on the field. Inko took a bite out of her food. And hopefully with this exercise, you'll be more careful when approaching villains when you do face them. Midoriya smiled and nodded. I will. And then her phone rang. Midoriya took another bite of her food before she answered. Hello. Oh hi, Kendo-san. You're already there? Great. Yeah, let me finish my lunch and I'll be there in a bit. Midoriya hung up just as her mother raised an eyebrow. Some of my classmates suggested we go to the gym together for some training, Midoriya explained. Both physical and quirk training. Quirk training, huh? Inko smiled slightly. Well, I guess there's a first time for everything. Hey, what's that supposed to mean? Inko just giggled and kept eating, while Midoriya pouted at the statement. Meanwhile, at the same gym Midoriya and Kendo went to once, Kendo and the girls of Class 1B either sat around or used some of the equipment to train, waiting for Midoriya's arrival. So, you once met Midoriya-san here, Itsuka-san? Yui, the stone-faced brunette of 1B asked. Yup, we talked for a bit and trained together, but nothing really came out of it, the redhead answered. I'm gonna try to rectify that today. Do we need to be here, though? Kinoko, the mushroom girl, inquired. It sounds like you and Midoriya-san don't need us here. This isn't just about me and Midoriya-san, Komori-san, this is something for all of us, Kendo replied. I want to try help us grow closer as a group by training together. Yeah, I don't think Midoriya-san needs training though, Setsuna, the sharp-toothed greenette, blurted. I mean, did you see the madness that was her quirk? It's so simple, yet so stupidly strong at the same time dash. Everybody needs to train, Tokishin. Just because a quirk is simple yet strong doesn't mean it can't be trained further, Kendo shrugged. In fact, for all we know, what we saw Midoriya-san do might only be the surface of her full potential. Kinoko lowered her head. I can already tell some of us are gonna have trouble sleeping tonight. Sorry for the wait. The 1B girls turned around and smiled at seeing Midoriya arrive, only to be shocked at seeing her drinking from a humanoid, orange-haired girl head using a straw. Orange tan. Hi Midoriya-san, Kendo greeted. Who's your friend? Friend? You mean Orange Tan? The greenette asked. She's one of my Gijinkas. I made her out of an orange. Orange Tan. Gijinka? You mean like those internet memes? Kinoko asked. That's what you call them? Yup. A friend suggested it to me once, and I liked it. Midoriya took another sip of Orange Tan. Would anybody like a sip? Most of the girls said no, with Yui going the extra mile and adding, I'm on a strict no-head diet, with her usual deadpan tone. More for me then, Midoriya shrugged, taking a quick sip from the saddened Orange Tan before asking, so, what are we going to do, Kendo-san? Oh right. Kendo clasped her hands together. I wanted to introduce you to our classmates while we trained our quirks. If you don't mind. Nah, I'd love to. Midoriya chirped. I'm actually really curious as to what everyone can do. Kendo smiled. All right then, let's get started. The 1B girls got together for quirk training, and the first one to go was Yui, who grabbed a heavy dumbbell and activated her quirk, shrinking it into the size of her hand. That's Yui Kodai, Kendo said. Her quirk lets her grow or shrink non-living things, so long as she touches. Midoriya looked at Orange Tan. Non-living things? Getting an idea, Midoriya ran to Yui's side and whispered something to her ear. She seemed rather perplexed by the request, but she found herself unable to say no to Midoriya-san's joyful smile. Yui grabbed Orangetan, then activated her quirk. In the blink of an eye, the football-size Orangetan grew to be the size of a yoga ball, Midoriya taking the chance to get on top of her while giggling. So Midoriya-san's Gijinkas count as non-living things, even after she transforms them. Kendo scratched her chin. This sounds like it could give us some good opportunities for synergy. And even more reason to be wary. Midoriya paused as she was lifted off Orangetan, a silver aura surrounding her as she flew to the one lifting her up, Yanagi. Whoa, you can lift people up? So long as they're not heavier than a single person, Yanagi hummed. And given how light you currently are, perhaps I could lift your Gijinka too. It was then that Kanako got Kendo's attention with a whisper, gesturing her to come to her soon after. The redhead did, and once they were far away enough, Kanako whispered, "Do you think she might be one of those people too?" "Those people?" Kendo repeated. "You know, those who are born with quirks that are vastly stronger than they can handle?" Kanako twiddled her fingers. "There's a guy in Class 1A that's kinda like that too. He can summon massive icebergs just by stomping with his right foot." "Please, Komori-san, Midoriya-san's quirk is completely different," Kendo replied, waving her hand dismissively. "Besides, outside of the crazy thing she did in the entrance exam, she seems to have a good handle on her quirk." "Perhaps. But there's another reason why I'm worried about her." Kendo raised an eyebrow. "And that is, have you ever heard of something called the quirk singularity?" Principal Nizu sat calmly on his desk, sipping his tea as he waited for the arrival of one very special student. See, he had decided that it would be better if Midoriya learned about the quirk singularity now, rather than later, and so he had called her to come meet him. And with 3 knocks on the door, he had a feeling it was about time. "Come in." The door opened, and the miniature Greenette entered the room, closing the door behind her before waving her hand with a nervous expression. "Good evening, Midoriya-san," Nizu greeted. "Please take a seat." Midoriya frowned, almost as if she was on the verge of crying. "Am I in trouble?" "Not in the slightest. There's just something I need to tell you." Midoriya calmed down and obliged, sitting down on a chair before the polar mole asked. "Tell me, Midoriya-san, what does your quirk do, exactly?" The Greenette scratched her cheek. "Well, I touch an object, focus some energy and boom, they turn into a humanoid." "Would you mind giving me an example?" Midoriya got off her chair and put a hand on the armrest, focusing for a moment before the chair turned into a wooden girl. "Chairten." Nizu got off his chair and walked to the wooden girl, who promptly crouched down and patted her thighs, as if inviting the cryptid to sit down. "This is very intriguing, Midoriya-san," Nizu answered while inspecting the Gijinka. "Tell me, have you always been able to use it to this extent?" "I guess." Midoriya shrugged. "I discovered it by complete accident when I was younger, and it's been always like that since then." "So, you touch an object, focus, and the object turns into a female humanoid?" Midoriya nodded. "I've tried making a male humanoid too, but they always come out female no matter what I try. And before you ask, yes, all they can really say is what they were made from and ten." "I see. Well then, Midoriya-san," Nizu turned to the girl. "Have you ever heard of something called the quirk singularity?" Midoriya shook her head with a notable frown. "No, but it doesn't sound good. According to some scientists, quirks grow stronger every generation. First-generation quirks are vastly weaker to, say, second- or third-generation quirks, for example." Nizu folded his arms behind his back and walked back to his desk. "Some scientists believe that eventually, once enough generations have passed, quirks will become so powerful that nobody will be able to handle them, until society itself falls apart thanks to these uncontrollable powers. That, Midoriya-san, is what is known as the quirk singularity." Churton gasped while the Greenette exclaimed, "That's horrible." "It sure is. And with the decreasing population of quirkless people, not only will we eventually have to deal with uncontrollable powers, but a world populated exclusively by people with uncontrollable powers." Nizu sat down and sighed. "And before you ask, yes, I'm thinking you might actually be proof of the validity of this scenario." Chairtan and Midoriya exchanged worried looks. "But of course, you're not the only one." The duo turned back to the cryptid. I don't know if you've noticed, but a lot of Hero Core students have ridiculously strong quirks. For example, Todoroki-kun from Class 1A has insane ice and fire power at his disposal, and Yaoyorozu-san. Well, I've been told you already met her. Yeah, I did, Midoriya smiled. She can create anything from her body as long as she knows the chemical base of it or something. Mixing that with my quirk was rather interesting. And 1A isn't the only one. Fukudashi-kun from your classroom can turn words into reality. Komori-san can summon mushrooms anywhere, including throats. Do you see where I'm trying to get at? Yeah. I do. Midoriya frowned yet again. But what do you want me to do? There are experimental gadgets meant to lower the output of a quirk. It's the best chance to stall the singularity until we find a way to deal with it permanently. Nizu clasped his paws. However, they're still under development, so in the meantime, I'd like it if you and your classmates tried to train your quirks without using too much force. Okay. Midoriya paused for a moment, then nodded with a smile. Yes, Principal Nizu. Well, that's all I wanted to tell you, Nizu nodded. You're free to go back to your classroom now. The greenette nodded and strolled to the door. And Midoriya-san? Yes, Principal Nizu? Would you please turn my chair back to normal? Once the day was over, Midoriya immediately went back home, and once she arrived, she opened the door and headed inside. I'm home. Welcome home. Inko chirped as she went to receive her daughter. How was school today? It was fine, Mom, Midoriya answered with a little smile. It was fine. Just fine? You told me it was great just a few days ago. Inko put Midoriya down and closed the door. Did something happen that made you upset? Midoriya lowered her head, and her mother crouched down and put her hands on her shoulders. Mo, if something's bothering you, you can tell me about it, you know? I'm here for you. Midoriya gained a little smile, then nodded before nervously asking. Do you think I'm dangerous? The next day, at UA, Class 1B had lunch at the cafeteria, with Midoriya looking sadly at her food while Monoma ranted on the other side. Why does Class 1A always get the best gigs? We're equal to them, or at least we're supposed to be, and yet they get to go on a trip to the USJ while we're stuck in here. That's so unfair. Nobody responded to Monoma's claim, not even Midoriya. Midoriya, this is the part where you tell me to shut up, Monoma said awkwardly. Remember? Yeah, she said sadly. Monoma frowned. Okay, Midoriya-san, be honest. What's bothering you? The greenette looked at her classmates, who were staring at her with concerned looks. Well, no way. That's what he said? The quirk singularity does sound pretty scary. These and many more opinions formed on Class 1B after Midoriya told them what Principal Nizu told her yesterday. As for Midoriya herself, she was sitting on a bench, moving her legs up and down while looking at the ground. Well, I hate to say this, but I can see where Principal Nizu's coming from. The class gasped, except for Kendo, who shouted, "Shut up, Monoma-kun," in disapproval. I'm sorry, guys, but think about this. Monoma walked to Midoriya's side. Midoriya-san's quirk lets her create life out of next to nothing. Sure, the creatures she creates are on par with humanized Pokemon, but still, she's creating life. Not even Class 1A has such a crazy quirk. And with that in mind, I got into thinking, Midoriya said before looking at her palms. My quirk is already pretty crazy, but I'm still learning more and more about it. Everything I've done is just the tip of the iceberg for me and I. Midoriya hugged herself. I don't know if I'm ready to find out more about it. Kendo promptly walked to Midoriya and crouched down, putting her hands on her shoulders as she said, Midoriya-san, I know it can be scary to find out more about your quirk, but you can't let your fear stop you from strengthening yourself. You're not the only one who's been afraid of finding out more about their quirk. The greenette raised an eyebrow. I'm not. Kendo raised her hand and increased its size. Back when I first trained my quirk, I couldn't control when my fists grew or shrunk. I'd be doing my homework like normal, and next thing I know, my fist grows twice the size of my head and snaps my table in half. Wow, that sounds rough. And I'm not the only one, Kendo faced her classmates. Right, guys? A fellow greenette stepped forward, making the slice your head off gesture before splitting her head off her neck harmlessly. My quirk lets me split my body into several pieces. And when I first found out about it, I almost wet myself. I legit thought I was gonna die, and didn't even have the guts to try training it for an entire year. Then, a guy with a speech bubble for a head stepped forward. My quirk takes onomatopoeia to its logical conclusion. As soon as I say something with enough force, the sound effect becomes reality. Like dash. We'll take your word for it. Class 1B exclaimed in unison. Okay. Kendo chuckled and turned back to Midoriya. See, Midoriya-san? You're not alone in this. It's okay to feel worried about your quirk's potential, but there are people who know what you're going through and will help you deal with it. Midoriya gained a smile and blushed. And she retained that smile as Class 1B went to the training city and waited to be told what their exercise would be. So, All Might, Midoriya blurted. What exactly are we gonna do today? Yeah, we already did the whole heroes versus villains trying to stop a bomb from detonating shtick, Monoma pointed out. Surely you got something new to teach us today, right? Perhaps I do. All Might answered. But in order to figure out what I have planned, you're gonna have to think a little more creatively. Crickets were heard as the entire class fell silent, until Midoriya turned to the insect-headed student of the class, Tagaru Kamakiri, and saw he was the source of the cricket sound. What? He asked defensively. That's just how I whistle. Midoriya stared at Kamakiri for a moment before flashing a smile. That's cute. Today's exam involves thinking outside the box, Vlad King explained bluntly. Outside the box? The class asked in unison. He means that whatever test we got today, we need to solve it in a way that's unexpected or unusual, Kendo explained. Like, for example, let's say that Monoma-kun tried to talk things out with Class 1A instead of bothering them. Kendo-san, just because we're being hypothetical here, doesn't mean you can use scenarios that would never happen, Monoma quipped. However, I do see what you mean. There's definitely some strategic value in using a strategy that falls outside of what's expected from you. And that's what today's exercise is all about. All Might added. You'll be heroes trying to deal with a hostage situation. You must use your wits and try to think of an unexpected strategy to get past the villain and rescue the hostages. I'll be the one acting as the villain for today's exercise, Vlad King added. You'll all be grouped together into small teams, and once the timer starts, you'll have a limited time to think of a strategy and implement. If you don't manage to do this in time, you'll fail. So, wait a minute, Monoma grimaced. We don't even get time to prepare a strategy beforehand? That's just how it is sometimes in heroism, Vlad King mused. One can never know when they might need to make split-second decisions. Now, if we're all clear on this, let's make the teams. One quick team-making session later, Midoriya found herself teamed up with Setsuna Tokage and Manga Fukudashi, the other two students who expressed issues with learning about their quirks. Well, that was unexpected. But at least they were now in the middle of a fashion shop, with Vlad King standing in the middle, ready to fight as soon as All Might went. Start! Right, there was no prep time. Minute. The trio ran around, dodging Vlad King's bloody scythe and hiding behind a desk. Okay, what do we do? Setsuna asked. What can we do to get past him? I could use my quirk to send him flying away with an explosion, Manga suggested with a shrug. No, that won't do. You might end up damaging the infrastructure and dash. Hey! The duo turned around to see Midoriya staring at some clothed mannequins with a little smile. I think I know how to make this work, but first, take your clothes off. Setsuna and Manga raised an eyebrow. It'll all make sense soon, I promise. Vlad King scanned the area, searching for the students to try defeat them and put an end to their test. This seemed to be the case when three figures similar to them leaped from the desk and tried to dogpile him. Keyword being try, since the man easily overpowered them and pinned them to the ground. This is your only chance, heroes, he growled and narrowed his eyes. Surrender now or pay the consequences. However, after a short silence, Setsuna turned around and revealed a simplistic face as she chirped. Mannequin Tan. What? And next thing Vlad King knew, he heard a door open, then close. Meanwhile, upstairs, Minoma and Kendo sat on the ground, arms tied up with ropes. Of course they'd make me a hostage, Minoma growled, rolling his eyes. Why would I ever be anything else? Suddenly, the doors were kicked open, and in came Setsuna, Manga, and Midoriya, each wearing white suits with fedoras. Hey there! Setsuna chirped while striking a pose. We've come to rescue you, Manga added. Midoriya promptly reached for her back and took out Kumatan, who she promptly let go and watched as she sliced Kendo and Minoma's ropes to bits. Thanks for the help, Kumatan, Kendo said while rubbing her wrists. Kumatan. Great, now that you're free, let's get out of here, Midoriya stated. Who knows how long it'll be before dash. Suddenly, the ground burst open and Vlad King emerged, ready to go down everyone with his quirk. However, Midoriya was a step ahead, as she and Kumatan exchanged looks, nodded, and leaped to each other, hugging the other tightly as the greenette said. Kumatan. Combine! A bright light covered the room for a moment, forcing everybody to cover their eyes as Midoriya shouted. Ladies and gentlemen. And villain who's about to get there but trashed. Vlad King's eyes widened. Did she just swear? I present to you. The smoke dissipated as Midoriya spun in place, eventually stopping to strike a pose as she exclaimed. Midoriya. However, she wound up stopping in front of her teammates and the hostages, so she spun once to face the villain. Midoriya. Vlad King lowered his eyelids as he scanned the girl's outfit. She still had the same dress she always wore, but now the dress was brown, and she sported a bare-eared headband with bare mitten gloves. Well, it's something new, I guess. Vlad King cracked his knuckles. Don't think a minor recoloring will be enough to stop me, hero. Oh, trust me, villain. Midoriya bared her fangs. I'm not just a mere recolor. Oh my god, she's so goddamn cute. Those were the thoughts echoed across the viewer room as the remaining girls of Class 1B, as well as some of the boys, tried to lean closer to the screen. Well, this is definitely an interesting turn of events, All Might remarked. And Midoriya Shoujo's teammates aren't slacking off either. Everybody turned to another screen, showing Midoriya's teammates grabbing and taking the hostages out of the building, Setsuna taking the time to pose for the camera. And as this happened, Midoriya kept fighting Vlad King, actually keeping him on the defensive as the pro-hero grabbed and launched her repeatedly, Midoriya bouncing back to him each time. Well, as interesting as it would be to see the conclusion of this fight, Midoriya-san's team has clearly won, so dash. All Might. Everybody turned to the entrance, where Nizu stood alongside a tired Ida. Cancel the test, something came up at the USJ. This isn't fair. Midoriya pouted. I was totally gonna win. Well, look at it this way, Midoriya-san, Nizu said as he and the teachers got ready to go save the day. You may not have won the fight against Vlad King. Nizu turned around and saw Midoriya, still in her Midoriya form, being hugged by most of Class 1B. But you definitely won your classmates' hearts. So cute. Too cute. Come home with me, please. Nizu chuckled. Well, we gotta get going. You kids stay here and stay calm, alright? Right? Minoma, one of the few students who weren't hugging Midoriya, spoke. Just do the same thing we always do. Let it go, Minoma-kun, Kendo said. You know as well as everybody else that we're ill-prepared to deal with something like this. Minoma took a deep breath and looked elsewhere. Of course. Well, we should get going by. And so the teachers ran to provide aid for the 1A students, leaving Class 1B in their classroom. Shortly after they left, Midoriya was engulfed with light, then ejected herself from the hug, with Kumatan being left to receive the love of her classmates. Seriously, guys, Midoriya sighed. I was suffocating in there. Everybody turned back to see Kumatan waving her arms, as if begging to be hugged some more. Man, I get to show off my new power and I don't even get to beat someone with it. Midoriya whined. What a rip-off. Yeah, but the point of the exercise wasn't to defeat the villain, it was to rescue the hostages, Kendo pointed out. And you did a great job distracting Vlad King long enough for your teammates to get us out. And at least you weren't stuck with the role of hostage, Monoma pointed out. Although, come to think of it, even if you were given the role of hostage, you probably would have found a way to free yourself anyway. Midoriya tilted her head. You really think so? You can turn non-living things into cute anime girls. As long as you have a little bit of imagination, you can have solutions for anything. Midoriya scratched her chin as she thought about it, forming a smile as she got an idea. Once the next day rolled around, Class 1B went to the gymnasium to work on their quirks, being supervised by Vlad King as they did so. So, Vlad King-sensei, Kendo blurted, "Is Class 1A okay?" Of course they are. They got the aid of the teachers and have some insane quirks at their disposal. Whatever happened at USJ, they must be okay, Monoma replied, only to grow concerned as he asked. Right. Vlad King eyed his students, then looked back at the rest of the heroes in training, the pair of friends sharing concerned expressions before going to train on their own. As that happened, Midoriya trained by her lonesome, walking around the gym looking for objects to transform, humming all the while. However, she eventually settled for a pile of rubble next to her, which she brought to life by placing her hand on it and activating her quirk. To her surprise, rather than one piece of the rubble transforming individually, the whole pile of rubble transformed, creating a miniature army of little girls that looked like they were wearing rubble-themed onesies. Rubble Tan, the army said in unison. Well, that's new, but I was hoping I could do something a little bit different. Midoriya put a hand on her cheek. Can I do anything to mix things up? Hey, Midoriya-chan. The greenette turned around and shrieked upon seeing the floating head of one of her classmates. Relax, girl, it's just me. Setsuna Tokage, the talking head said as her headless body walked to and grabbed it. We worked together for yesterday's exercise, remember? Oh, right, we did. Midoriya exclaimed, forcing a nervous smile. Did you want to train together? Not exactly. I found a pair of girls who might be able to help you train. Setsuna chirped as she connected her head to her neck. Come here, girls. On cue, a pair of girls, one with black hair and the other with silver hair, walked to Setsuna's side. These are Reiko Yanagi and Yui Kodai, Setsuna explained as the girls waved hello. Both of their quirks require inanimate objects, so I thought they'd be perfect training partners for you. More explicitly, Kodai-san's quirk only works on inanimate objects, Yanagi explained. And mine, while usable on anything, is harder to use when dealing with something heavier than a human, so I focus mostly on smaller objects. Midoriya hummed. I think I'd like to train with Kodai-san first. What does her quirk do? I touch things and make them bigger, Yui explained dryly. Her quirk only works on non-living things, Setsuna explained. The theory is this: just because your Gijinkas look alive doesn't mean they actually are. Kodai-san will try to use her quirk on them. If it doesn't work, then they're alive, but if it does work, then that means they're still considered a non-living object. The Rubble-tans looked at Midoriya with teary eyes, prompting the small girl to hug them. It's okay, you'll always be living beings to me. Then she turned to Kodai. Ready when you are. Midoriya grabbed one of the Rubble-tan and handed it to Yui, who nearly fell by the increase in size, barely keeping it in place for a second before she dropped the Gijinka. Huh, they're that heavy? Setsuna asked as Yui caught her breath. Yanagi-san, maybe you should use your quirk while Kodai-san recovers. Yanagi nodded and began levitating one of the Rubble-tan, eventually levitating the rest with some difficulty before gently putting them down. It's official, they're about as heavy as the object they were made from, Yanagi stated. If they had become as heavy as a normal person, I wouldn't have been able to lift them. Alright, that's one question answered. Setsuna chirped. Now all we need to find out is, do they count as living beings or not? The girls turned to Yui, who finished catching her breath before she began working her quirk. She put a hand on a Rubble-tan and focused. And in the blink of an eye, the Rubble-tan became as big as one of the columns nearby, only to turn back to normal shortly after. Okay, so we can indeed verify your Gijinkas still count as non-living even after being Gijinkified, Setsuna chuckled. That could give us something to work on. Aren't there more questions to be answered? Yanagi asked. Duh, of course there are. But it's up to Midoriya-san whether we answer them or not. Setsuna answered. Right, Midoriya-san? But the tiny greenette had already left, leaving the rubble-tan behind with the girls. As for Midoriya, she walked over to Kendo, who punched a column with her enlarged fist. Oh, Midoriya-san, she said upon noticing the greenette. Do you need something? Midoriya glanced at Vlad King in the distance. Kendo-san, what's wrong with Vlad King-sensei? I don't know, the redhead sighed. Ever since he came back from the USJ, he's been completely silent. And when people ask him what's wrong, he remains silent. So no news about what happened to Class 1A? Kendo could only shake her head with a worried expression, one shared by Midoriya as they took one more look at their teacher before going back to training. Just what happened at the USJ. Once the next day rolled around at UA, Vlad King entered the Class 1B classroom with a wide smile. Listen up, students. The UA Sports Festival is coming up. To say the students cheered up at the announcement would be an understatement, though their joy was mixed with confusion for some. Yup, that's right. Principal Niza decided to move up the date that the sports festival would take place, and now it will happen in a couple weeks, Vlad King added, folding his arms and nodding. Now, while I want you to train as much as you can for when the festival comes, I also want you to stay as focused on your studies as possible. So, strike a balance as best as you can, got it? Monoma promptly raised his hand and asked, Are Class 1A gonna participate? An eerie silence developed in the classroom, with it taking no time before Monoma noticed a lack of responses from his classmates. Hello? This is the part where someone tells me to shut up. Actually, Monoma-kun brings up a legitimate question for once, Kendo remarked. Are Class 1A gonna go after whatever happened at the USJ? Vlad King paused for a moment, then sighed. The faculty is discussing what to do with Class 1A's status in the sports festival, with Eraserhead being rather passionate in the discussion. Believe it or not, Midoriya had a hard time seeing how someone like Eraserhead could be passionate about anything, but she chose to keep it to herself. Anyway, the faculty has this under control, so let's start homeroom. And the class began to start as normal, until Midoriya realized something and raised her hand. Yes, Midoriya-san? The greenette tilted her head. Are all of us going to participate? You thought what? Midoriya pouted and twiddled her fingers, avoiding eye contact with Kendo and Monoma as they looked at her in disbelief. All students of every course always participate in the UA Sports Festival. Monoma snapped. What made you think you wouldn't participate? It just escaped me, okay? The greenette whined. I'm more used to watching the sports festival from home than actually being part of it. Monoma and Kendo exchanged looks and sighed. More importantly, what do I do? The duo turned back to Midoriya, who looked worried. The sports festival is a televised event. My quirk is hard enough to hide in general, but if I use it at the festival, and I will, then there's no doubt that I'll be the target of a lot of unwanted attention. Midoriya put both hands on her cheeks and whimpered. What do I do? Monoma leaned closer to Midoriya and snapped his fingers before saying, Nothing. You know what? Shut up, Monoma-kun, Midoriya told the guy before turning to Kendo. What should I do, Kendo-san? Kendo prepared to say something, then shrugged. Nothing. Midoriya gasped and faced Monoma. You corrupted her. No, we just agree that there's nothing to do, Monoma shrugged. Just stay calm for now. We can discuss strategy later down the line. Midoriya frowned and lowered her head. That doesn't help me at all. Kendo smiled. Would ice cream do the trick? Midoriya perked up. You pay. Kendo chuckled and extended her hand forward, which Midoriya grabbed immediately. And then they walked away, leaving Monoma behind to muse. Class 1B's ace in the hole is a little girl who can create living beings from anything. We might actually win the sports festival for once. The sports festival was coming closer and closer, and on the last day before it, the students of Class 1B gathered after classes, walking to the train station at the same time. I really hope whatever Monoma-kun has to say is important, Yanagi remarked. I'd like to go home as soon as I can. Alright, I heard that, and I get it, Monoma stated. So, let me make this clear. The sports festival is coming soon, and this year, things must be different. Monoma clenched his fist and raised them high. This year, it's time to win the sports festival. Win it? Setsuna snickered. I mean, participate, sure, but win it? Class 1B never wins. Yeah, Class 1A has won for several years in a row for a reason, Kamakiri added. And I mean, just this year, they have Todoroki-kun, Yaoyorozu-san, and Explosion Dushabak. But Kogu-kun. I know what I said. Yeah, I agree, they have those guys with incredibly powerful quirks, Monoma smirked. But we have Midoriya-san. Everybody faced the small greenette, who put her hands on her hips and grinned proudly. Midoriya-san has one of the most powerful quirks I've ever seen, while also being one of the weirdest. Monoma boasted, Midoriya nodding in agreement. Not only can we take advantage of her small stature to make our enemies underestimate her, but her Gijinkas could give us a head start. You realize that if we put all our hopes on Midoriya-san, Yui blurted. Then we'll be basically screwed if she gets taken out. Monoma winced. She's got a point, Shishida remarked, adjusting his glasses. If Kodai-san said more than 2 words about it, then it must be worth looking into. Look, I know I'm putting a lot of pressure on Midoriya-san, but it's our best shot, Monoma stated. We're gonna depend on her, and that's final. Why don't we talk about this over a group chat? Midoriya suggested. We all have each other's phone numbers already, so why not do that? Don't group chats generally devolve into a chaotic mess of ribbing and SEC jokes? Setsuna inquired. Midoriya shrugged with a little smile. Oh, what the hell, let's do that, the sharp-toothed girl said as she took out her phone. This should be fun. Yeah, it might be, Kendo sighed. And it'll help us stay in touch and keep the communication going. And so, with the group chat idea unanimously approved, Class 1B continued to the train station, ready to close the final day before the moment of truth. Eventually, the day came, and all the students gathered at the start of an obstacle course, stretching as they prepared to run to the stadium in the distance. Midoriya stretched particularly excitedly, sporting a wide smile while wiping some sweat off her forehead and taking a couple deep breaths. So, you ready, Midoriya-san? Kendo asked nearby. Ready as I'll ever be. You better, Kamakiri stated. Those who don't manage to arrive in time will be eliminated from the sports festival. Midoriya gulped. Thanks for the pressure, man. Well, luckily, Midoriya reached for her pocket. I got a couple things to help me reach the stadium. The greenette took out a couple toys and looked at them before taking one out, a little airplane, and pocketing the rest. And start. And just in time too. Midoriya's classmate sped ahead while the small girl activated her quirk and threw the transforming toy into the air, jumping up just as it finished changing forms. Shortly after, Midoriya found herself riding a large replica of a small airplane, with a girl's face in front of it. Airplane Tan. Time to fly. The greenette flew with Airplane Tan to the skies, flying past her classmates as. What's this? Class 1B's Emi Midoriya has somehow summoned some kind of anime girl airplane hybrid. Where did she get her? Midoriya laughed heartily as she went up to the skies, and a giant shadow loomed over her. Facing forward soon revealed the source. It was a set of 3 0-pointers, accompanied by several dozen sets of 1, 2, and 3 pointers on the ground. That's right, folks. From the graveyard of the entrance exam, the pointers have returned for revenge. As Present Mike kept talking, Midoriya maneuvered around the giant robots and flew past them, breathing a sigh of relief. Right before the robots were covered with ice, sending them plummeting down to the ground and bringing to view a guy with red and white hair. That guy just took down those 0-pointers by giving them the cold shoulder. Midoriya mentally panicked, swallowing her fear before shaking her head. Whatever happens next, I need to be wary of that guy, whoever he is. So Midoriya and Airplane Tan kept flying, eventually coming across the second obstacle. And here is the second obstacle. Watch your step, because if you don't, you might fall victim to the fall. A nice try, sports festival. Midoriya scoffed before leaning against her seat and putting her arms behind her back. You should have thought of a failsafe in case the students could fly? Midoriya laughed haughtily, right before an explosion happened behind her. What the? Airplane 10 turned back into the toy plane and she and Midoriya plummeted to the ground, hitting one of the platforms underneath her. She hastily reaches for the toy plane, but alas, it bounced off and fell into the fall. The greenette turned around to find the source of the attack, which turned out to be a pink-haired girl with goggles and some kind of bazooka, who even had the nerve to flash a smile and a thumbs up when Midoriya looked at her. Not one to be deterred, however, Midoriya took out her toys and quickly searched for another Gijinka she could make. Gaia! Without thinking, Midoriya turned and saw a student about to fall into the fall. And so, she hastily grabbed a barrel toy, opened it to reveal monkeys inside, and used her quirk. The student kept screaming until they had something wrapped around their waist. A set of identical monkey girls with their palms connected to one another. Chain Monkey Tan. Hey, are you okay? Midoriya shouted. The student looked up. Yeah. Then climb the monkey girls. Midoriya yelled, her face turning red. I can't hold them forever. The student wordlessly nodded and began climbing the chain of monkey girls. I don't believe it, folks. In an event that doesn't encourage teamwork, Midoriya has gone back to stop a student from falling in the fall. And as the audience cheered, the student finally reached the top of the line and Midoriya pulled it back before turning the monkey girls back to normal. Hey, thanks for the, are you okay? Midoriya took a couple of deep breaths and wiped some sweat off her forehead. It's nothing. You were just heavier than I expected. Oh, I see. Well, how about I pay you back by helping you? And how are you, Dash? Before Midoriya could finish her question, the student grabbed her, spun around, and threw her hard enough to send her all the way to the next set of obstacles. Midoriya hit the ground face first, stood up, and thanked the student before facing the next set of obstacles, to see a frozen minefield. And the last obstacle is the minefield. However, the Shoto Todoroki has frozen it shut. So instead of mines, the final challenge will be ice physics. The horror. And indeed, when Midoriya looked back to the field, many students tried in vain to move, only to end up sliding all over the place. This kept going until the ground shook, and from it burst out giant vines, which grew and split into other vines that allowed the students to swing about. Midoriya-san, go! The greenette turned around and saw the source, Shiozaki, who clasped her hands while using her hair as the source of the vines. But what about you? I'll find a way to catch up, just go. The smaller girl nodded, jumped up, and swung from vine to vine alongside the other students, Shiozaki waiting until she was far away before splitting her hair from the vines and preparing to swing herself. Once that was done, most of Class 1B's students stopped to catch their breath at the stadium, all while the audience cheered and more students arrived. Has anybody seen Midoriya-san? I'm here. Everybody turned around and saw the greenette bolting as fast as she could, sweating heavily as she reached and stopped next to Kendo. Thank goodness you're okay, the redhead said as she and Midoriya caught their breath together. We were starting to get worried. Yeah, me too, Midoriya sighed. Today has been really taxing. Why are you talking like the day was over? Tsubasa, the bug-eyed 1B student, chuckled. We're just getting started. Midoriya groaned in frustration, then realized. Wait a minute, where's Shiozaki-san? Here. Everybody turned to see Shiozaki running towards them as fast as she could, and as soon as she arrived, the gates loudly closed, freezing the stunned Shiozaki in place as her classmates went to her. And that's officially it for the first round. The students who didn't manage to reach the stadium before the gates closed have officially been eliminated. So that means Shiozaki-san was dead last. Setsuna chuckled and patted the plant-haired girl's back. Geez, talk about a slide of luck. Shiozaki laughed nervously at the comment. I'm actually curious now, Midoriya sighed. If Shiozaki-san got last place, who got first place? Woohoo! Class 1B turned around, and they saw to their collective annoyance a cheerful Bakugo, shooting firecrackers as he exclaimed. Hell yeah! Number 1, bitches. Of course someone from Class 1A would reach first place. Setsuna rolled her eyes. Why wouldn't they? I know this is gonna sound weird, but don't pay attention to him, Monoma stated. Look at the bright side. Most of us passed, and most importantly, so did Midoriya-san. The guy finished catching his breath before he turned to Midoriya and formed a sincere smile. As long as she's around, we have a chance. Midoriya stared at Monoma for a moment, blushed, and looked elsewhere huffing. Shut up, Monoma-kun. Class 1B, what was left of it anyhow, shared a little laugh as they gathered along with the other students. The first round was done. And there were 2 more to go. There were many things Midoriya expected to do once she and her classmates hit the break room to get prepared for the next round. She certainly didn't expect Shiozaki to hug her right into her bosom. Midoriya-san. Shiozaki cried, tears streaming down her face. Forgive me for this, but I need your cuteness to calm down. That's fine, Midoriya said, her voice muffled by the fun bags of Shiozaki. But I could just make you a Gijinka to cheer you up dash? Shiozaki hugged harder. No, I want it to be you. Okay. Shiozaki-san, please restrain yourself, Kendo told the plant girl. At this rate, you're gonna suffocate Midoriya-san with your BRSS. Shiozaki gasped and hastily released Midoriya from her grasp. I'm so very sorry, Midoriya-san. I couldn't help myself. No, it's okay, I understand, Midoriya replied, waving her hand dismissively. It's hardly the first time someone has hugged me to calm themselves down. Shiozaki smiled a little. There is something about grabbing you that feels quite calming, to be honest. Midoriya giggled, her posture becoming wobbly and uneasy as she nearly fell over, only to quickly catch herself and calm down. This, naturally, quickly got everyone's attention. Midoriya-san, are you okay? Kendo asked. You've been acting a bit weird since this morning. I'm perfectly okay, honest. Midoriya replied. It's just that I've become a bit tired since I used my quirk so much. She did make a living plane and a chain of monkey girls in quick succession, Yanagi pointed out as she walked to Kendo's side. We're still not quite sure on how Midoriya-san's quirk works, but we can agree that making too many Gijinkas must put some strain on her, especially if it's done consecutively. Yeah, precisely, that's the only problem. Midoriya perked up. I was a bit too careless in helping that student avoid ending in the fall, and used more energy than necessary dash. Then don't do it again. Midoriya winced and forced a little smile as Kendo stared at her, saying, I really don't want to talk about you as if you were a living weapon, but Monoma-kun's got a point, you're our best shot at winning the sports festival for once. Kendo frowned. If you end up falling or forfeiting or anything, who knows how heavy it'll hit on our class's morale. Midoriya paused and lowered her head. I understand, I'll be more careful from now on. Excuse me? Everybody turned to the entrance to see a 1A student nearby. But it wasn't anybody they really recognized. He was a very tall, very muscular guy with brown hair and prominent lips, holding a box of sweets. Oh hey, it's the student that I helped. Midoriya chirped. What brings you here? Oh, I was just looking for you, the guy said. Mind if I come in? Everybody exchanged looks, and they nodded, their eyes glued to the guy as he walked to Midoriya and handed her the box. These are for you, as a thank you gift for helping me avoid falling into the fall. Midoriya opened the box, and she squeaked at what she saw inside. A selection of colorful macarons sat inside, each simple yet adorable in design. The guy smiled. Do you like them? Oh, by the way, my name's Rikido Sato. What's yours? But Midoriya didn't answer, instead staring wide-eyed at the gift before she fell to the side and off the bench. Midoriya-san! Kendo exclaimed. Midoriya's eyes spun wildly in pure bliss. And on the stands, a certain bear-themed Gijinka smiled solemnly before glowing and turning back into her plush form. When Midoriya woke up, she found Sato had not only left, but her classmates had brought her a familiar teddy bear, which she hugged as Kendo rubbed her forehead. So, let me get this straight, Kendo sighed. You used your quirk to summon Kumatan and had her seat among the audience, and you kept her active while also transforming all those Gijinkas during the obstacle course? Midoriya paused. I did. Why? Flushing and looking elsewhere, Midoriya hugged the teddy bear tightly as she answered. I wanted her to see me being cool. Blood suddenly burst from Setsuna's nostrils, causing her to slump back against a wall. Toki-san, are you okay? Monoma exclaimed. Yeah, I'm fine, Setsuna snickered. Sorry, but even when she's being reprimanded, Midoriya-san's too fing cute. Which is why Kendo-san is the one reprimanding her, Monoma haughtily pointed out. She's the only one, besides yours truly, who'll tell Midoriya-san what's what without bias. Your nose is bleeding too. Monoma briefly touched his nose and looked down to see blood on his fingertip. Though for all intents and purposes, he was surprisingly calm about it. It is indeed bleeding. Back on topic, Kendo sighed. Midoriya-san, I don't know how rough things were for you to think you needed to do this, but you need to be more careful on how you use your quirk. There's still a lot we don't know about it, but we're currently depending on you to help us get past at least the second round of the tournament. But most importantly, Kendo put a hand on Midoriya's head and ruffled it. You have us. And we're not going anywhere. So please, if you need love and attention, just let us know and we'll try to give it to you, okay? Midoriya blushed brightly, then hugged her stuffed bear and averted eye contact. Okay. Kendo smiled a little, completely oblivious to the glares she was getting from Setsuna. Break time's over, fellas. Everybody get back on the stage for the second round. All right, everyone, time to get ready, Kendo stated as she stood up and clapped her hands. The second round will start soon and we need to be prepared. The rest of Class 1B nodded as Midoriya placed her teddy bear on the bench and hopped off. I'll be back soon, wait for me here, okay? And so, the tiny greenette skipped and joined the rest of her class, leaving the teddy bear all alone as the doors closed. Cavalry battle? Those words echoed across the students as they saw the roulette wheel meant to decide what event would be the second round about fall squarely on cavalry battle. Partially because they had a feeling the wheel was rigged to always land on that spot. Nevertheless, once the explanation for how the event would play out was said, the 1B students quickly regrouped and began talking strategy. Okay, so we need to keep as many points as possible and land in the top 5 to go to the next round, Kendo started. That means whatever we do, we need to keep Midoriya-san on the top 5 if we want to have a chance at winning this. Well, Midoriya-san seems pretty light, so she'd need to go on top, Setsuna hummed. Now the question would be, who would be her horses? Everybody paused, then turned to face the horse-like pony Tsunatori, who winced and backed away. That won't work, Monoma stated, walking to Pony's side as the horse girl shook her head. Even if Tsunatori-san and Midoriya-san successfully passed the event, that would leave Class 1B with less students should the rest of us fail. Her team should have more people, at least 3 or 4. That's true, Shizaki clasped her hands. The more of us that pass, the more likely we can at least survive past the first round of the tournament. Precisely. I want to be one of Midoriya-san's horses. Setsuna chirped as she raised her hand. And what can you provide to Midoriya-san's team? Monoma asked sternly. Nothing. I just want to be her horse, 'cause she's cute. Denied. Ah, I have an idea. Everybody turned to look at Midoriya, who raised her hand before flashing a tiny, toothy grin. Hey, first place. Bakugo stopped in his tracks and turned around to see a pink-haired girl running up to him, stopping just before she crashed into him, and causing him to unleash an explosion right on her face, sending her flying back. Back off, you crazy beach. But once she regained her balance, the girl laughed out loud and shook herself, removing the soot from her face as she boasted. You fool. I'm a support student. Things blowing up on my face is par for the course. Bakugo winced. My only weakness. A person who's immune to being blown up. She appeared right in front of him again. Anyway, my name's Mei Hatsum. I saw you reach first place in the obstacle course and I thought, we could team up for the cavalry battle. What do you say? Bakugo gritted his teeth, but before he could give his usual response, the pinkette edged closer to him. If we both go to the next round, you can show everyone how you're the best of the bunch, and I get to show off my babies to the world and make a name for myself. We'll both benefit from this. I can show everyone I'm the best without a clingy pink beach on my side. Bakugo hissed before walking away. If I wanted one of those, I'd have asked Pinky to join my team. And what if I made you a gadget that can make you even stronger? Bakugo stopped once more, and he turned around to see Hatsum staring at him with a devious smile and a sultry expression in her eyes. That sounds like BS. Bakugo narrowed his eyes. How do I know you're not ripping me off? Hatsum's smile turned into a grin. I can guarantee you that I can give you something worth your time. Hatsum approached the blonde explosion man and extended her hand forward. Just give me a chance, all right? Bakugo eyed Hatsum's hand, then her eyes, a devious glint appearing on them. With each class having ended their strategy meetings, the time came forth for the cavalry battle to begin. All the groups gathered at the arena, with the audience cheering as Present Mike did his narration. And now, we're going to begin the cavalry race. Let us see how all the groups are getting prepared for the round. A group of floating cameras emerged from seemingly nowhere and opened their lenses, allowing the audience at home to see the event up close and as clearly as possible. Ooh, those are some real nice babies. One of the cameras turned around and floated to the group of the first place winner, Katsuki Bakugo, who stood on top because of course he would, while two of his classmates stood at the side and Hatsum stood at the back, waving her hand with a wide smile. My, oh my. It seems like we have an unexpected team-up between Class 1A and the support course. With a team consisting of Ijiro Kirishima, Mina Ishido, Mei Hatsum, and the first place of the last event, Katsuki Bakugo. Yes, so very nice babies. Hatsum chuckled, liking her lips while scratching her chin at the sight. Oh, I can already imagine how many upgrades I can give them to make them so sellable. Hey, Four Eyes. Bakugo yelled at the pinkette. Stop drooling over the cameras. Well, maybe if you were anywhere near as hot as these babies, I'd like do that. Hatsum snapped back. I hate the fact they just met, and yet they have better chemistry than Bakugo-kun and the rest of our class, Mina pouted. You call that chemistry? Kirishima whispered. And while that happened, one group of 1B students discussed among themselves. I'm really worried, Ibra said as she looked around. I mean, I have full faith in the abilities of our classmates, but we have quite a hefty competition. And if Midoriya-san's plan doesn't work? Yeah, it feels like it's been a full year since Midoriya-san told us about her plan, Tetsu remarked. Or was that just me? Let's have faith in Midoriya-san, Hananuki stated, clenching his fist. She said she had a plan to go to the next round. The very least we should do is give her the benefit of the doubt. With that said, the cameras soon turned towards the attention of Midoriya's group, where Kendo was at the top being carried by two of her classmates, and Midoriya clung to her back as a sort of piggyback. Everyone went at the sight, but the girls paid little attention, with the two of them flashing equally confident smiles as Present Mike continued. And now, without further ado, let's start the cavalry race. The sirens blared, and with no hesitation, the members of Midoriya's group removed their headbands and handed them to Midoriya, who grabbed them with her hand with a sneaky smile. What's this? One Class 1BS group have willingly removed their headbands and handed them to Midoriya. Just what are they thinking? Flashing a tiny grin, Midoriya grabbed her own headband and activated her quirk, causing the headbands to glow before transforming and exploding, with the smoke eventually settling to reveal a bunch of tiny girls with headbands and numbers across their bodies. What's this? Class 1B has struck with a new strategy. There are now a bunch of little girls running around the arena, said little girls being the bandanas given to 1B. Midoriya raised her fist. All right. But due to having no bandanas as a result, their group's number drops to 0. And as soon as she heard that, Midoriya looked down to see the girls running away from them, giggling as they did. Oh shit. Don't focus on that for now, Midoriya-san. Kendo shouted, getting the greenette's attention. Let's use the distraction to our advantage. Midoriya looked surprised at Kendo's statement, but smiled and nodded before her group began to dash towards the other groups, intent on taking their headbands and turn them into anime girls as well. I can't believe it, Kirishima remarked in disbelief as a headband girl ran past him. That 1B girls took her team's headbands and turned them into crazy fast humanoids. I mean, her being able to do that was already proven in the previous round, Mina pointed out. But to think she'd go so far as to jeopardize going to the next round for a dash. Less talking, more brutalizing. Bakugo snapped, pounding his fists with a wide grin. Let's go give that Beach's team a piece of our mind. You're not gonna go after the bandana girls? Hatsum chided. Why bother catching those little sheets one by one? Bakugo grinned. When I can catch their maker and get them all at once. Hatsum rolled her eyes and groaned. I didn't think you'd be into that, first place. Hey, Hatsum-san, maybe you should watch your words a little, Kirishima whispered to the Pinkette. Bakugo-kun might not seem too bad right now, but if he gets really riled up dash. Bakugo? I'm talking to first place right here. Hatsum responded before leaning back. Then again though, maybe I should stop and never talk to him again. In fact, I should probably tell my friends to never speak with him either. She has friends? Mina asked out loud. The F are you talking about? Bakugo asked, shooting a glare at Hatsum. I just want to grind that little beach to the ground, what's wrong with that? Isn't it obvious? All this talk about going after that girl, who looks fairly young and acts pretty childish, despite the fact that there's other things to take into account, Hatsum narrowed her eyes. If I didn't know any better, I'd say you're hunting after a loli. Mina and Kirishima gasped in shock, while a vein nearly popped in Bakugo's head, his eyes bloodshot as he asked. The F you say? Did I stutter? She's a loli, plain and simple, Hatsum smirked. She's small, has a childish disposition, she doesn't even have a pay like yours truly. If anybody looked at her on a surface level, they'd think she's a kindergartner, not a high school student. Then Hatsum leaned closer and whispered to Bakugo's ears. Everybody's watching you right now, first place. If you go chase after that little loli, instead of going after the bandanas, people won't see an up-and-coming hero, oh no. Instead they'll see a perverted jackass who threw away his chance to go to the next round of the sports festival, to instead hunt after some childish butt. They won't see you as a hero, they'll see you as… Hatsum got closer to Bakugo's ear and whispered, Loli-kun. As soon as she said that, something awakened inside Bakugo, who clenched his fists and stated with a tone of voice far too quiet for anybody's comfort. Pointy hair, Pinky. Prepare yourselves. The duo winced while Hatsum snickered, and Bakugo raised his fist. We're going to get all the headband girls, and if she makes more, we'll get those too. And then, Bakugo got a wide, sadistic grin. We'll wipe those 1B extras out of the festival.